Let the day fade away. Settle into your bed or favorite chair, lower the lights, and let's take a slow journey into the past. You can also let us know in the comments where in the world you currently are and what time it is for you. The chill bites harder than a suspicious neighbour at the medieval market. There's no central heating to crank up, no thermostat to argue with. Welcome to your nightly routine as a peasant in the Middle Ages. Forget the cosy imagery of crackling fires and hearty mead. That picture's been painted by folks with more wool in their closet than you'll see in a lifetime. For you, it's a single woolen blanket, if you're lucky, and a roof that whistles more than it shelters. Let's talk about that woolen blanket. A basic one could cost around 6p in 14th century England. For context, a day's wage for a labourer was about a penny. So, you're looking at nearly a week's work for something that doesn't even cover your toes. And that roof? Made of thatch, which is great for ventilation, too great in fact. On windy nights, it's like having nature's air conditioning, minus the off switch. Peasants weren't living in sprawling stone manors. No, your abode is a one-room hut, and privacy is as mythical as a dragon. The floor is dirt, occasionally covered with straw, which serves as a makeshift mattress. Your bed, if we can call it that, consists of whatever rags and old clothes you can muster. Layering becomes an art form here. Forget the latest fashion trends. The goal is to resemble a human onion, shedding layers only when absolutely necessary. Now, when the temperatures really drop, you've got to get creative. Enter your four-legged, woolly friends. Sleeping with livestock might sound like a scene from a rustic romance, but this isn't about pastoral charm. Cows or sheep in your living quarters provide much-needed warmth. They're the original heated blankets, albeit with a tendency to moo or bleat through the night. Of course, this isn't just an act of desperation. It's a reflection of your place in the medieval social hierarchy, where resources trickle down like molasses in January. The noble classes, with their stone fireplaces and feather beds, live in a different universe. They might toss a cloak your way out of benevolence, or when it's too moth-eaten for their taste. Essentially, the economic gap is as wide as the Grand Canyon, long before that became a thing. Despite these challenges, you're not just sitting around freezing your toes off. You're part of a community, a web of relationships and obligations. The village is a living organism, with everyone contributing to its survival. You might barter your labour for a scrap of pork fat to grease a skillet, or swap a bushel of barley for an extra woolen cap. This isn't just about getting by, it's about maintaining ties and ensuring everyone has a shot at surviving the winter. And while we're busting myths, let's tackle the idea of hearthside idleness. There's no lounging around the fire because that fire needs constant feeding. Wood is a precious commodity, often gathered from common lands or purchased at a cost. You get your warmth in brief, stolen moments between carting water, tending to fields, and praying the harvest gods are in a generous mood. The medieval peasant's life was a study in resilience. You weren't just surviving, you were adapting, improvising, and occasionally cursing the heavens. But who could blame you? When winter nights stretch longer than a bard's tale, and your breath hangs in the air like a ghost, warmth is more than a luxury. It's a lifeline. So, next time you pull up your comforter, spare a thought for those who braved frostier nights with nothing but wits, wool, and a few good cows. Speaking of those frostier nights, let's crack open the medieval economic ledger and see what's really sapping your warmth. Forget the romantic notion of a bountiful, endless forest to plunder for firewood. In reality, gathering wood is less of a leisurely stroll through Sherwood Forest and more of a strategic operation. Wood is the medieval equivalent of liquid gold, minus the glitz and glamour. It's a resource so scarce it could make your modern gas bill look like pocket change. Here's the lowdown. In 14th century England, a cord of wood, which is about 128 cubic feet, could set you back anywhere from 2 to 4 shillings. Now, to put that into perspective, remember our pal the penny? The one that represents a day's toil in the fields? Yeah, you'll be shelling out anywhere from 24 to 48 of those hard-earned pennies for a decent stack of logs, and even if you did have the coin, you'd be hard-pressed to find enough wood to buy in the first place, thanks to strict feudal regulations and the lord's penchant for hoarding resources like medieval Scrooges. The lords, in their grand stone keeps, have access to sprawling forests, which are often marked as private reserves. To them, a roaring fire is just another Tuesday, while you're left haggling with your neighbour over a few sticks like it's the latest must-have gadget. The disparity is as glaring as the flames in their hearths. But, of course, this isn't just about who has the bigger bonfire, it's about control. The lords control the land, the resources, and by extension, your ability to stay warm or not after sunset. Now, you might be wondering, why not just gather your own firewood? Enter the delightful concept of common land. These are communal areas where peasants can legally collect wood, but guess what? They're often overused and stripped bare faster than a Black Friday sale. Plus, venturing into the Lord's forest uninvited could land you in a world of trouble, medieval style. We're talking fines, or even a stint in the stocks, which are no more comfortable than they sound. This scarcity isn't just a matter of inconvenience. It reflects the broader economic framework of feudalism that seems to have been designed by someone with a cruel sense of humour. You're tied to the land, working it not for yourself, but for the lord who owns it. Your labour is your rent, and it's paid in sweat and blisters. Meanwhile, the lords collect taxes and rents, living a life that's as cushy as a down pillow compared to your straw-stuffed sack. But let's not just focus on the lords as the villains twirling their moustaches in the corner. Many of them are merely cogs in the feudal machine themselves, beholden to higher lords or even the king, who demand their own hefty share of resources. It's a pyramid scheme of warmth, with you stuck freezing somewhere near the bottom. This economic disparity shapes every aspect of your life, from the clothes you wear to the food you eat. And speaking of food, let's not forget that your ability to trade for essentials is also dictated by what little you have to spare. Barter is your currency, and it's a delicate dance to ensure you don't end up giving away your only means of survival. In this world, a bushel of grain is more valuable than gold, and a good harvest is your best insurance policy against the chill. If you're lucky enough to own a bit of land, you might grow some of your own fuel in the form of fast-burning crops like straw or peat. But again, we're talking about a resource that burns quicker than your patience on a cold night. So the challenge remains. Stretch what little you have to last through the long, bone-chilling winter. In this medieval game of survival, every decision is a gamble, every resource a potential lifeline. You're not just a passive pawn, you're a player in a high-stakes chess match with warmth itself as the ultimate prize. So next time you toss another log onto your modern-day fire, or nudge up the thermostat, remember the peasants who navigated these icy nights with ingenuity, tenacity, and just a dash of medieval grit. So, with the medieval game of survival taking its toll, you might be wondering why anyone would ever romanticize the peasant's life as some pastoral paradise. The truth is, the image of a peasant frolicking through fields, embracing nature like a long-lost sibling, is about as accurate as a tabloid horoscope. While the idea of a bucolic existence where you're one with the rolling hills and whispering winds sounds poetic, the reality bites harder than a frost-covered morning. Let's start by addressing the elephant, or perhaps the shivering sheep in the room. Nature wasn't your friendly neighbour. It was more like that unpredictable uncle who shows up unannounced and overstays his welcome. Winters were harsh, unforgiving, and often downright brutal. The romantic notion of living off the land ignores the fact that the land was as likely to turn on you as a bad-tempered bull. Sure, you might have a field or two, but they were more likely to offer up rocks than a bounty of food. Medieval chroniclers, the original bloggers, weren't shy about documenting these harsh realities. Take John of Worcester, for example. He noted in the 12th century that a particularly nasty winter could wipe out entire villages, leaving behind nothing but ghostly remnants and frozen crops. You were at the mercy of the elements, and the elements weren't known for their mercy. Now, let's talk about that cosy hearthside scene often depicted in medieval art. Spoiler alert, it's a fantasy. Maintaining a fire in the middle of winter was a full-time job, one that didn't come with benefits or lunch breaks. Gathering firewood wasn't a leisurely stroll in the woods, it was a grueling task that involved trudging through snow and ice, all while hoping you didn't come face to face with a grumpy lord's forester. And if you did manage to scrounge up enough wood, you had to be strategic about its use. Every log was precious, like a medieval version of gold nuggets, without the shine or the ability to buy you a nice warm cloak. This brings us to another harsh reality: illness. With winter came the dreaded chill, and with the chill came an array of ailments that would make any modern-day hypochondriac shudder. Frostbite wasn't just a possibility, it was practically a rite of passage. Your fingers and toes were constantly at risk, turning blacker than a medieval knight's armor. And if frostbite didn't get you, respiratory illnesses might. Cold, damp living conditions were a breeding ground for everything from sniffles to more serious maladies like pneumonia. A fascinating tidbit from the 14th century chronicler Henry Knighton reveals how entire communities could be decimated by diseases during harsh winters. In one particularly cruel season, Knighton described how the villages were left eerily silent, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by an oppressive stillness. The warm, communal atmosphere was often replaced by the cold, hard reality of illness and death. In this frigid game of survival, warmth was a luxury, not a given. The economic context of the time meant that most peasants were just scraping by, and the additional burden of illness could push them over the edge. The feudal system demanded labour and taxes, and falling ill wasn't an excuse to shirk those duties. It was a system of exploitation, where every cough or chill was a reminder of your place in the social hierarchy. Despite this, the idea of peasant life as an idyllic connection with nature persists, perhaps because the myth is so appealing. It offers a vision of simplicity and purity, a life unburdened by the complexities of modern society. But this illusion crumbles under the weight of reality. The medieval peasant didn't live in harmony with nature. They battled it daily, each winter a test of endurance and ingenuity. Sure, there were moments of beauty and connection, watching the sun rise over frosty fields, hearing the quiet rustle of leaves in the wind. But these were fleeting, overshadowed by the constant struggle to stay warm and healthy. Nature was both a provider and a harsh taskmaster, and your survival depended on how well you could navigate its whims. So, next time you see a painting of a medieval peasant serenely tending to their fields, remember the untold story behind those brushstrokes. It's a tale not of pastoral bliss, but of grit, determination, and the relentless pursuit of warmth in a world that offered little comfort. The medieval peasant's connection to nature was less an idyllic affair and more a gritty fight for survival, where every sunrise was a new battle against the cold. Keep these thoughts close as we continue to unravel the medieval life, a tapestry woven with equal parts myth and stark reality. While the medieval peasant's connection to nature was more of a gritty tug-of-war than a peaceful partnership, the community spirit was a different beast altogether. When the cold crept in like an uninvited guest that just won't leave, humans did what they do best. They huddled together, both physically and socially. First, let's dive into the medieval version of a sleepover communal sleeping arrangements. Forget about the modern concept of personal space. It was a luxury that peasants couldn't afford. When the temperature dropped lower than a night's drawbridge, the entire family bunked together, often in one bed. Heck, it wasn't uncommon for livestock to join the party. Cows in your quarters? Not just for warmth, but also because they were too valuable to leave outside, where frost could claim them faster than you could say moo. This wasn't mere desperation, it was survival strategy 101. The body heat generated by several people and animals could make the difference between a shivery night and a tolerable one. And let's not forget the practical aspect. With fewer rooms to heat, you could save precious fuel for when it was most needed. Now, let's talk architecture. Medieval peasants didn't have the luxury of hiring architects with fancy degrees, but they knew a thing or two about making do. Enter the rudimentary shelter, or as I like to call it, the medieval DIY project. Thatch roofs, wooden beams, and mud walls were the materials of choice. Sure, they weren't winning any design awards, but they had a certain rustic charm, like a shabbily built log cabin that's one gust of wind away from a remodel. These homes were strategically constructed to make the most of what little warmth was available. The hearth, the heart of any peasant abode, was centrally located. Not just a place to cook your meagre meals, it also served as the primary heat source. But let's not romanticize it too much. Without chimneys, smoke often filled the room, turning your home into the medieval equivalent of a smokehouse. Breathing was a bit of a chore, but hey, at least you were warmish. Social strategies extended beyond physical warmth into the power of local traditions and festivals. The medieval calendar was peppered with events designed to lift spirits and shake off the winter blues. Think of them as medieval morale boosters. Who needs a motivational speaker when you've got the Feast of Fools? A celebration where societal norms were flipped on their heads. It was a time when the lowliest of peasants could become king for a day, and the community could laugh in the face of hardship. While the lords might have their grand banquets, peasants had their own brand of revelry. The winter months saw gatherings that were as much about survival as they were about celebration. Sharing food, music, and stories created a warmth that no hearth could match. It was less about opulence and more about camaraderie, a reminder that even in the bleakest of times, they were in it together. This communal spirit wasn't just a nice-to-have, it was a necessity. Historical records, like those from the 14th century chronicler Jean Froissart, highlight how village gatherings were pivotal in forging strong community bonds. They were the glue that held the social fabric together, ensuring that when one family struggled, others stepped in to help. It was the medieval safety net, a precursor to the social welfare systems we know today. But let's not get too misty-eyed. These gatherings were also strategic. They were opportunities to barter, exchange news, and even form alliances. In a world where survival often hinged on your network, these interactions were vital. It was like LinkedIn, but with more ale and fewer endorsements. Now, let's debunk another myth, the idea that medieval festivals were all wholesome, innocent fun. Sure, there was merriment, but there was also a darker side. Alcohol flowed freely, and it wasn't uncommon for these gatherings to end in brawls, or, at the very least, some hearty arguments. After all, nothing says community spirit quite like a good-natured fistfight over who gets the last cup of mead. In the face of adversity, the medieval peasant community was more than just a collection of individuals. It was a living, breathing organism, adapting and evolving to survive the harshest of winters. Resources were pooled, knowledge was shared, and the collective will to endure was stronger than any individual struggle. So, the next time you shiver at the thought of a medieval winter, remember that it wasn't just the cold they braved, it was the isolation, the scarcity, and the endless challenges that came with it. Yet, through it all, they found warmth in each other, proving that while you can't control the weather, you can certainly weather it together. And while the next chapter of this medieval saga awaits, let's leave a little room for more tales of grit, survival, and the indomitable human spirit in those frost-bound times. As we draw the curtain on our medieval deep dive, it's time to tip our woolen caps to the peasants who lived through the bone-chilling winters with a level of tenacity that would make even modern survivalists raise an eyebrow. Their story isn't just about enduring cold nights, it's a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. These folks were the original innovators, hacking life centuries before smartphones and Wi-Fi. Let's face it, the romanticized version of medieval life, a pastoral paradise where peasants frolic through fields, is a fairy tale fit for bedtime stories, not history books. The reality was far more grueling. Yet, that very grit makes the medieval peasant's life a compelling narrative of survival against the odds. Picture a world where every element of your daily existence demands resourcefulness. Need to stay warm? You make do with a threadbare cloak and a cow that doubles as a space heater. Out of firewood? You barter, beg, or borrow, all while dodging the wrath of a lord who guards his forest like it's the crown jewels. So, what can we learn from these frostbitten, yet indomitable souls? First off, there's the undeniable power of community. When you're shivering in a hut with more drafts than a novelist's wastebasket, you learn to lean on your neighbours. Medieval life was the original social network, minus the memes, but with plenty of face-to-face interaction. It wasn't just about surviving individually, it was about making sure your entire village weathered the storm. And let's not overlook the sheer ingenuity it took to get by. Whether it was constructing a makeshift chimney to keep smoke at bay, or perfecting the art of layering clothes like a medieval fashionista, peasants were the MacGyvers of their age. They turned scarcity into a canvas for creativity, proving that necessity truly is the mother of invention. In a world where every resource was finite and every comfort hard-earned, innovation wasn't just a skill, it was a lifeline. Now, while we're dismantling myths, let's address the persistent allure of the simpler times narrative. Sure, there's something appealing about the idea of living in harmony with nature, free from the shackles of modernity, but simplicity isn't synonymous with serenity. For medieval peasants, life was a relentless hustle, a constant negotiation with the elements and the social hierarchy. It was a time when every sunrise was both a blessing and a new challenge, a reminder of how precariously balanced life truly was. Yet, amid this harsh reality, humour and humanity persevered. It's easy to imagine a peasant, tired and cold, cracking a joke to lift spirits, a quip about the Lord's latest tax, or the cow's incessant snoring. These moments of levity were as essential as bread and ale, a reminder that even in the darkest times, laughter is a universal balm. Fast forward to today, and we've come a long way. From the comfort of central heating to the convenience of online shopping, our lives are buffered from the harshness that once defined winters. But in some ways, the essence of what kept medieval peasants going, their reliance on community, their ability to adapt, their humour in the face of adversity, remains relevant. Sure, we might not be huddling together for warmth in the same way, but the spirit of communal support is alive and well. Whether it's organising a neighbourhood watch or pooling resources for a community project, the medieval model of community resilience still holds water. And let's not forget the timeless appeal of a good blanket. After all, some things never change. In wrapping up our journey through the frosty nights of the Middle Ages, it's worth acknowledging how far we've come, and yet how some lessons remain timeless. The medieval peasant's life, stripped of myth and romanticism, offers a raw yet inspiring look at the human capacity to endure. It's a tale of grit and grace, a reminder that while the trappings of life have evolved, the core of what makes us resilient, our ability to adapt, to connect, to find joy in the bleakest of times, remains unchanged. So, the next time you're snug under a fleece throw, sipping on a hot drink as winter winds howl outside, spare a thought for those who came before. They braved the cold with far less, yet their spirit was anything but frigid. It's a chilly comfort, knowing that while winters have warmed, the human heart remains as steadfast as ever. And as you drift off, cosy and content, let the legacy of these resilient souls be the last thought you embrace before sleep. In the world of ancient Rome, water wasn't just a basic necessity, it was an empire's flex. When your civilization stretches from the broiling sands of North Africa to the chilly mists of Britain, keeping everyone hydrated is a logistical nightmare, but the Romans saw it as a chance to showcase their engineering prowess and political savvy. Let's dive headfirst into the marvel of Roman aqueducts, where straight lines and H2O became the empire's signature cocktail. The Romans were obsessed with straight lines, and not just because they had a penchant for rigidity in their military formations. When it came to aqueducts, they believed that the shortest distance between 2 points was not just a straight line, but a statement. Take the Aqua Appia, the first Roman aqueduct dating back to 31-2 BCE. It stretched a humble 16.4 kilometres, but it was a trailblazer, setting the precedent for future projects. Those who think Roman roads were the empire's greatest legacy clearly haven't considered the mind-bending math that went into this early aquatic highway. Now, why did they go through all this trouble? Well, the Romans were notoriously averse to being thirsty. In a world where just grab a bottle of water wasn't an option, aqueducts played a critical role in city planning. Rome wasn't built in a day, but the idea of turning it into a watery wonderland came pretty close. They saw water as more than just a thirst quencher, it was a tool of political power and urban development. The more water you could bring into your city, the more public baths, fountains, and lush gardens you could boast about. And let's be real, nothing screams, "I'm in charge," quite like a city that never runs dry. But it wasn't just about bragging rights. Water was a crucial component of public health and sanitation, two things that the Romans took much more seriously than some of their neighbours. In a time when other cities were still struggling with mud and muck, Rome was flushing waste away with the elegance of a city determined to not smell like a barnyard. The aqueducts made it possible for Rome's population to balloon to over 1 million people, a staggering number for the ancient world, without collapsing under its own weight. The engineering behind these marvels was as impressive as the ambition that fueled their construction. Roman engineers harnessed gravity with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel. Aqueducts sloped gently, falling just a few inches every 100 feet to keep water flowing smoothly. This was no easy feat. The Romans had to navigate valleys, hills, and the occasional mountain, all while maintaining that perfect gradient. And let's not forget the sheer scale of these projects. The Aqua Marcia, for example, delivered around 190,000 cubic metres of water to Rome every day. That's more than enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool over 75 times. It stretched over 91 kilometres, and included stretches of both under and above ground channels. Talk about having a long reach. While we're myth-busting, it's worth noting that these aqueducts weren't built by Herculean feats of strength or divine intervention. Nope, it was all about good old Roman engineering and a legion of labourers, often slaves, who did the heavy lifting. The romantic notion of a small team of geniuses crafting these masterpieces is lovely, but the reality was a bit more gritty. Labour was cheap, and lives were often expendable, a harsh truth behind the grandeur. Yet the beauty of these aqueducts was undeniable. The Pont du Gard in France, with its triple-tiered arches, stands testament to Roman architectural flair. It wasn't just about getting water from point A to point B, it was about doing it with style. These structures became symbols of Roman power and ingenuity, leaving a legacy that would inspire awe for millennia. What's even more fascinating is how the Romans leveraged their aqua bounty for political gain. The emperors knew that a well-watered city was a happy city, and a happy city was less likely to revolt. Augustus alone commissioned the construction and repair of aqueducts as a way to cement his rule and endear himself to the populace. Water was a political tool, and emperors wielded it with the precision of a master politician. In the grand scheme of Roman life, aqueducts were a testament to the empire's ability to overcome nature's challenges and turn them to their advantage. They were symbols of an empire that could bend the natural world to its will, using straight lines and clever engineering to ensure that neither the city nor its rulers ever went thirsty. As the water flowed, so did the power and prestige of Rome, proving that in the ancient world a little water could go a long way. As the water flowed and the empire's power swelled, the Romans faced the Herculean task of constructing over 2,400 kilometres of aqueducts across the landscape. Yes, you heard that right. 2,400 kilometres, or in terms a modern road tripper might appreciate, about the distance from New York to Houston. These weren't just dinky little ditches either. We're talking about massive structures that defied the odds and gravity, all while maintaining a gentle slope of about 1 to 2%. The Romans didn't just move mountains metaphorically, they literally carved through them, tunneled under them, and bridged over them. Now, if you're thinking these projects must have cost a fortune, ding ding ding, you're right. The Romans shelled out serious cash for these endeavours. The construction of an aqueduct like the Aqua Claudia, which spanned over 69 kilometres, could cost upwards of 350 million sesterces. If you're scratching your head wondering how that translates to today's money, imagine a few $1 billion spent on a single infrastructure project. No small change when you consider they didn't have the luxury of modern-day tax systems or crowdfunding platforms. But who exactly were the biceps behind these monumental feats? Enter the Roman labour force. An eclectic mix of skilled labourers, soldiers, engineers, and yes, a massive contingent of enslaved people. The latter were the unsung heroes, or rather the uncelebrated workhorses who toiled under the sun, chipping away at rock and earth, often without the luxury of a lunch break or even a basic understanding of OSHA standards. While we love to picture Roman engineers with their fancy abacuses and geometry skills, it was the sheer grunt work of countless labourers that turned blueprints into reality. The workforce dynamics of these projects were a fascinating blend of Roman efficiency and ruthlessness. Skilled engineers and architects, often educated in the Greek tradition, were the brains of the operation. But the brawn? That came from legions of labourers, many of whom were slaves captured in Rome's many conquests. Picture this. A ragtag band of defeated warriors from Gaul, now wielding pickaxes instead of swords, reshaping the very world that had overpowered them. It's a dark twist on the Rome wasn't built in a day adage. It wasn't built without a fair bit of human misery either. The Romans, ever the pragmatists, knew that keeping the labour force in check was as critical as the aqueducts themselves. The spectre of revolt was never far off, so the powers that be employed a mix of incentives and brutal discipline. While some labourers were granted freedom after years of service, others lived under the constant threat of the lash or worse. The carrot and stick approach wasn't just about managing a workforce, it was about maintaining the very stability of the empire. This brings us to the staggering logistics of it all. The sheer volume of water transported daily was enough to make Poseidon himself blush. Take the Aqua Marcia again, a massive undertaking that poured nearly 190,000 cubic metres of water into Rome every day. It's dizzying when you consider that this was achieved without the benefit of pumps or electricity. Gravity was the Romans' best friend, nudging water along those meticulously calculated slopes with the patience of a saint. And while we're here, let's tackle another myth. Those aqueducts weren't all about grand arches and postcard-worthy vistas. Most of the water travel was subterranean, hidden from view, and nestled in tunnels that snaked beneath the earth. The iconic arches we often associate with aqueducts were just a fraction of the overall design, used only when the landscape demanded it. They were the Roman equivalent of an architectural flex, a display of engineering prowess as much as a necessity. The economic impact of these aqueducts was as significant as their engineering. They turned Rome into a thriving urban centre, capable of supporting a burgeoning population with an appetite for public baths, fountains, and irrigated gardens. Water wasn't just a resource, it was a catalyst for economic growth, a foundation upon which the empire built its wealth and power. The aqueducts facilitated trade, improved public health, and even solidified social hierarchies, as only the elite could afford private connections to the water supply. Yet, even in their grandeur, these aqueducts tell a tale of human ambition and the relentless pursuit of control over nature. They were a testament to the Romans' ability to marry form and function, to turn necessity into art. Each stone laid was a step closer to an empire that believed in its own immortality. But the true beauty of these structures lies not just in their stone arches and flowing water, but in the story they tell. A story of an empire that dared to dream big, even if it meant building on the backs of those who never lived to see the fruits of their labour. As we continue to unravel the tale of Rome's watery wonders, it's clear that the aqueducts were more than just conduits for water. They were the lifeblood of an empire, a symbol of its power, and a testament to human ingenuity and tenacity. So keep your togas on, because there's still more to explore in the vast and intricate world of Roman aqueducts. Right, so if you thought the Romans just slapped some stones together and called it a day, buckle up. We're diving deeper than a Roman bath into the construction techniques that made these aqueducts the envy of the ancient world. Let's start with those iconic arches. We all love a good arch, don't we? They're like the Swiss Army knife of Roman engineering, elegant, efficient, and annoyingly perfect for structural support. The beauty of the arch lies in its ability to distribute weight evenly, allowing the Romans to span greater distances without the need for pesky columns every few feet. This was a game-changer for aqueducts, especially when the terrain was less than cooperative. But here's the kicker. Arches weren't exactly a Roman invention. The Romans were more like the Steve Jobs of the ancient world. They didn't invent everything, but boy did they know how to take existing concepts and make them iconic. The Etruscans, their ancient neighbours, were the original arch enthusiasts, but it was the Romans who mastered the use of arches in large-scale architecture. They took the Etruscan arch and, much like a reality TV makeover, turned it into something spectacularly Roman. Now, let's talk concrete. Roman concrete, or opus caementicium, was a marvel of ancient chemistry that still baffles modern engineers. Unlike the fragile stuff we use today, Roman concrete had the ability to withstand the test of time and the ravages of water. In fact, many Roman structures still standing owe their longevity to this ingenious material. It was made from a mix of lime mortar, water, and volcanic ash, with the latter being the secret ingredient that gave it hydraulic properties. This meant it could set underwater, making it perfect for aqueducts and other water-based structures. And let's not forget the gradient calculations. In the world of Roman aqueducts, getting the slope right was the difference between a flowing marvel and a stagnant disaster. We're talking about gradients as gentle as 1 in 4,800. That's about the slope of a snail's driveway, but it was crucial for ensuring the steady flow of water over long distances. The Romans used tools like the chorobates, a fancy plank of wood with a water level, to measure these gradients. It's almost poetic how they harness something as intangible as gravity with nothing more than wood and water. While we're on a roll debunking Roman myths, let's tackle the idea that Romans were lone geniuses in their engineering feats. Spoiler alert, they weren't. The Romans were cultural magpies, borrowing and refining ideas from the Greeks, Etruscans, and even the Carthaginians. Take the siphon, for example, a brilliant solution for transporting water across valleys without building massive bridges. This concept might have originated with the Greeks, but the Romans took it and ran, or rather, flowed with it. And then there's the not-so-small matter of environmental impact. It's easy to get swept up in the romance of Roman aqueducts, but they weren't exactly eco-friendly. By redirecting rivers and streams, the Romans altered ecosystems across their empire. Local water sources were sometimes depleted, affecting agriculture and local wildlife. In a way, these aqueducts were the ancient equivalent of modern-day megadams. Impressive, but potentially disruptive. The Romans might have been ahead of their time in engineering, but their environmental awareness was, let's say, under construction. The economic ripple effects of these aqueducts were as wide as the Tiber River itself. They allowed Rome to grow into a bustling metropolis, with a population that could enjoy luxuries like public baths and ornamental fountains. This wasn't just about hygiene or civic pride, it was about demonstrating the empire's wealth and power. The more water you could command, the more you could impress visiting dignitaries and intimidate rivals. In a world without Instagram, having the best baths in the empire was the ultimate bragging right. So, in the grand tapestry of Roman life, aqueducts were more than just stone and water. They were the arteries of an empire, pulsing with the lifeblood of Roman ambition. They are a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of mastery over nature, even if it meant stepping on a few environmental toes along the way. As we continue to unravel this story, remember, the true genius of the Romans wasn't just in their ability to build, but in their ability to adapt, improve, and sometimes just make it up as they went along. Stay tuned, because the saga of Roman aqueducts is far from over. As we wade deeper into the Roman aqueduct saga, let's turn the spotlight onto the social and political ripples these watery wonders created. Aqueducts were more than just a means to transport water, they were the liquid gold of the ancient world. If you think that sounds a bit over the top, consider this. In a city like Rome, where the population ballooned to over 1 million, the ability to keep everyone hydrated and clean was the ultimate power move. To truly grasp the political clout of these aqueducts, you've got to picture a world where water is life wasn't just a catchy slogan, it was the foundation of civilization itself. The Romans, ever the savvy statesmen, knew that controlling water meant controlling the populace. They didn't just build aqueducts, they crafted intricate networks that turned cities into urban utopias, or at least that was the sales pitch. With more than 11 aqueducts feeding the capital by the height of the empire, Rome boasted an impressive 1,000 litres per person per day. That's more water than most modern cities can provide, even with all our technological wizardry. But all this splendour came with a side of social stratification as thick as a Roman toga. The elite had their fingers on the aqueduct taps, both literally and metaphorically. While public fountains and baths were available to the masses, the true luxury of a direct water supply was reserved for the wealthy. Picture sprawling villas with private baths and gardens where water flowed as freely as the wine at a senator's banquet. For the common Roman, such indulgences were as distant as the stars. It was a clear reminder that in the hierarchy of Rome, not all citizens were created equal. And talk about a status symbol. In a society that prized opulence and public displays of wealth, having an aqueduct-fed estate was the ancient equivalent of owning a private jet. It wasn't just about convenience, it was about making a statement. The more water you could splash around, the higher you climbed on the social ladder. It was a classic case of keeping up with the Julii, if you will. Now, let's dive into the hygiene and public health front. Roman baths weren't just places to scrub off the grime of the day. They were centres of social life, a mix between a spa and a modern-day social media feed. Here, citizens from all walks of life could gather, gossip, and conduct business while enjoying the benefits of a good soak. Public baths were a hub of activity, and aqueducts made it all possible. They funneled thousands of gallons of water daily to these communal spaces, ensuring that the Roman populace didn't just survive but thrived. But hold on to your loofahs, because the reality wasn't all bubbles and bliss. While the Romans indeed had a leg up on hygiene compared to their contemporaries, their understanding of germs and disease was, let's say, elementary. Baths were public health double-edged swords, a place of cleanliness and a potential petri dish for pathogens. The very water that symbolized life and luxury could just as easily become a vehicle for disease. And while the aqueducts themselves were engineering triumphs, the water quality wasn't always pristine by modern standards. Nevertheless, The Romans were convinced of the link between clean water and a healthy city. They understood that a well-watered populace was less prone to ailments, and this, in turn, kept the empire's engine running smoothly. It was a pragmatic approach to public health, ensuring that the workforce remained productive and that the legions remained fit for service. Politically, aqueducts were a tool of the emperors, who used them to curry favour with the masses and solidify their rule. Augustus, that master of image and public relations, made aqueducts a cornerstone of his domestic policy, overseeing their construction and repair with the zeal of a modern-day politician, cutting ribbons at infrastructure projects. For the emperors, investing in water wasn't just about urban development, it was about securing their legacy and keeping the Roman populace content and complacent. Yet, beneath the surface of this hydraulic empire lay a darker truth. The labour force behind these monumental projects was a mix of skilled engineers and a vast sea of enslaved people. The glory of the aqueducts was built on the backs of those who had little choice but to toil in the sun, carving stone and laying pipes. It's a sobering reminder that while Rome's achievements were grand, they were often achieved through less than noble means. In the grand tapestry of Rome, aqueducts were both a marvel and a mirror, reflecting the empire's ambitions and inequalities. They were a testament to the Romans' ability to harness nature and bend it to their will, yet they also highlighted the social divides that ran through the heart of the empire. As we navigate these ancient waterways, it's clear that the story of Roman aqueducts is as much about power and politics as it is about engineering. So, while the water flowed, so did the currents of history, shaping a world that was both awe-inspiring and deeply flawed. And the saga, like the water, keeps on flowing. While the water carved paths through the Roman Empire, it also carved a legacy that would ripple through the annals of history, shaping the way we think about infrastructure today. So, how exactly did these ancient aqueducts influence modern engineering? Well, if you've ever turned on a tap and marvelled at the miracle of running water, you've got the Romans to thank, or perhaps curse, depending on your water bill. Let's start with the practical bits. The Romans pioneered the art of large-scale water management, and their techniques are still relevant in today's world. Their mastery of gravity-fed systems is echoed in the design of modern aqueducts and water mains. Take Los Angeles, for instance, where the Los Angeles aqueduct channels water over 375 kilometers, a feat that would make a Roman engineer nod in approval. This modern marvel was conceptualized with Roman principles in mind, proving that some ancient wisdom never goes out of style. But the Romans didn't just give us the blueprints, they gave us the blueprint for urban planning. Their aqueducts were the backbone of city development, allowing for the expansion of urban areas by providing a reliable water supply. Fast forward a couple of millennia, and cities worldwide are still grappling with the challenge of supplying water to ever-growing populations. The Romans set the stage for this urban dance, teaching us that infrastructure is as much about foresight as it is about engineering. Of course, it wasn't just about practicality, it was also about pizzazz. The Romans understood that architecture wasn't just functional, it was an art form. Their aqueducts were as much about making a statement as they were about quenching thirst. The Pont du Gard, with its graceful arches, wasn't just a means to an end, it was a testament to Roman grandeur and a precursor to the architectural showmanship we see in structures like the Brooklyn Bridge or the Eiffel Tower. The Romans knew how to make a splash, literally and figuratively. But let's not romanticize too much without acknowledging the elephant in the room, or rather, the crumbling stones in the field. The irony of Roman aqueducts lies in their current state. Many stand as ruins, silent reminders of an empire that once claimed eternity. These skeletal remains whisper of a civilization that believed it could bend nature to its will, only to be humbled by time and decay. While these structures were designed for permanence, they now serve as cautionary tales about the hubris of human ambition. The Pont du Gard may still awe visitors today, but other aqueducts have not fared so well. The Aqua Claudia, once a lifeline of Rome, is now a fragmented relic, its stones scattered like breadcrumbs leading us back to a time when Rome was the centre of the universe. It's a sobering reminder that even the mightiest empires are not immune to the ravages of time. The very permanence the Romans sought is now buried under layers of history, leaving behind ruins instead of rivers. And yet, despite their crumbling facades, these aqueducts continue to teach us about resilience and innovation. They are a testament to the human drive to solve problems, to create, and to leave a mark on the world. In their decay, they remind us that while empires may fall, the pursuit of progress persists. Each stone laid by Roman hands carries the weight of history, urging us to learn from the past as we stride into the future. So, as you sip your morning coffee or step into a hot shower, spare a thought for those ancient engineers who set the stage for modern convenience. They were the original think-outside-the-box crew, turning the challenge of water supply into a masterpiece of engineering and art. Their aqueducts are a legacy of ambition, ingenuity, and yes, a touch of arrogance, proof that while the Romans may have faltered, their ideas still flow through the veins of our cities today. In the end, the story of Roman aqueducts is a blend of triumph and tragedy, a narrative of human endeavour that transcends time. These structures were more than just stone and mortar. They were the lifeblood of an empire and the precursors to our modern world. They remind us that, while we may not conquer time, we can certainly make the most of it. And perhaps that's the real legacy of the Romans, a reminder that even in the face of inevitable decline, our achievements can echo through the ages, inspiring future generations to dream and create. So, as the sun sets on our journey through Roman aqueducts, take a moment to appreciate the balance of practicality and showmanship that defined Roman architecture. Their legacy is a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the enduring impact of those who dared to shape the world in their image. And while the stones may crumble, the stories they tell will continue to flow like the water that once coursed through their arches, whispering of past grandeur and the timeless dance between ambition and reality. The sun barely peeks over the horizon, casting a gentle glow on the sprawling jungle, and already the air is filled with the thud-thud-thud of chisels hitting stone. Welcome to Angkor in the 12th century, where the day kicks off with the kind of energy you'd expect from a place simultaneously hosting a rock concert and a construction site. You're standing in the midst of one of history's most ambitious building projects, Angkor Wat. Forget about your morning coffee. The sheer scale of this enterprise is enough to jolt you awake. Angkor Wat, in all its glory, isn't just any temple. It's the largest religious monument on the planet, sprawling over 160.6 hectares. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the size of 300 football fields. And you thought your morning commute was tough. The temple was commissioned by King Suryavarman II, a ruler who had a penchant for both divine legitimacy and monumental architecture. This wasn't just a building spree, it was a statement. Imagine a king who wanted to be remembered not just today or tomorrow, but for centuries to come. Suryavarman II was that guy. Now, let's talk logistics, because, honestly, the nitty-gritty makes this operation even more impressive. The sandstone blocks used to construct this mega-monument were quarried from Mount Kulin, about 50 kilometers away. That's not a short stroll down the road. These stones, each weighing up to 1.5 tons, were floated down the Siem Reap River on rafts. It's like trying to move your entire record collection across town during a flood without Spotify to back you up if everything goes underwater. And who was behind this Herculean effort? A workforce of around 300,000 labourers, including masons, carpenters and artisans, effectively making Angkor one of the largest job sites in the world at the time. It's a bit like the ancient version of a tech startup, except instead of coding, everyone's chiselling stone in the sweaty jungle. These workers weren't just building a temple, they were creating the very heart of an empire. Every stone laid was a testament to the king's power and vision. But let's not put on rose-tinted glasses just yet. The grandeur of Angkor Wat, as magnificent as it is, also speaks to the immense social and economic pressures of the time. This wasn't a labour of love for everyone involved. Many of these labourers were conscripted, their lives consumed by the temple's demands. In a world where life expectancy was probably around 35 years, that's a big chunk of your life spent hauling stone blocks. Suddenly, your 9 to 5 doesn't sound so bad, does it? Now, while the workforce was sweating it out, King Suryavarman II was playing a game of political chess, and he was pretty darn good at it. He wasn't just interested in temple building for the sake of aesthetic pleasure or religious devotion. This was about cementing his legacy and ensuring his rule was seen as divinely ordained. After all, nothing says, chosen by the gods, quite like a massive temple complex reflecting the heavens themselves. The king's savvy political maneuvers included aligning himself with Indian deities and philosophies, which gave him a kind of spiritual street cred. Aligning himself with Vishnu, the preserver god, was like getting a cosmic seal of approval. The construction of Angkor Wat was as much about divine architecture as it was about earthly politics. Suryavarman II was staking his claim, not just in the heavens but right here on earth. He was the kind of guy who knew how to make an entrance and, more importantly, how to leave a mark. So as you stand in the shadow of these towering spires, you're not just witnessing a feat of engineering, you're witnessing the king's grand strategy to etch his name into the annals of history. And that's just the morning. The day is young, and Angkor is a city that never sleeps, well, except for the occasional siesta. But who can blame them? With a project this big, a little downtime is practically mandatory. So take a deep breath, soak in the grandeur, and get ready for what the rest of the day in ancient Angkor has in store. As the sun climbs higher in the Angkor sky, you're probably wondering what other engineering wizardry these Khmer builders were up to, aside from assembling a temple the size of a small country. Well, buckle up, because the ancient Khmer were not just content with stacking stones, they were also the masters of waterworks. And I'm not talking about a few backyard koi ponds. Picture a series of canals and reservoirs so vast they could rival the infrastructure of a modern metropolis. This wasn't just an exercise in city beautification, folks. It was a matter of survival. You see, the Khmer Empire thrived in a land where the weather had two settings, monsoon deluge or dry season desert. They needed a system that could manage the bounty of the wet season and ration it through the lean months. Enter the Berets, massive reservoirs that could hold millions of cubic meters of water. The West Beret alone is about 8 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. That's roughly the size of Manhattan's Central Park filled with water, minus the joggers and overpriced hot dog stands. So how did they do it? Spoiler alert, it wasn't divine intervention. It was back-breaking labour mixed with some serious know-how. The Khmer engineered a network of channels and dikes that could control water flow, essentially turning their landscape into a giant hydrological circuit board. Water wasn't just a life-giver, it was a power play. Control the water, and you control the empire. It's the kind of real estate mantra that would make any modern mogul tip their hat. Now, let's talk about the pièce de résistance of Khmer engineering, the Temple Mountain. The term alone conjures images of some mythic Olympus, but the reality was a lot grittier. The concept was to mirror Mount Meru, the cosmic mountain in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. It sounds divine, but pulling it off was a masterclass in logistics and persistence. It's one thing to dream of building a mountain, it's another to actually move millions of tons of earth and stone to make it happen. And forget cranes and bulldozers, these guys were armed with little more than ropes, pulleys, and a whole lot of elbow grease. Imagine the ancient equivalent of a CrossFit gym, but with less lycra and more leeches. The workers would carve out blocks of laterite, a rock that turns harder than your boss's heart once exposed to the air, and cover them with a veneer of sandstone, making the mundane look majestic. Talk about an early lesson in not judging a book by its cover. But don't let the grandeur fool you into thinking it was all about aesthetics. These temple mountains were built with astronomical precision. The main axis of Angkor Wat, for example, is aligned to mark the equinox, a cosmic calendar set in stone. It's like Stonehenge, but with more bling. This wasn't just architecture. It was a statement of cosmic order, a reminder that the king was in sync with the universe itself. The heavens were literally on their side, or at least angling for a good selfie with the temple backdrop. Now, let's bust a myth that's as old as the stones themselves, that these creations were all about divine inspiration and celestial guidance. Sure, the temples looked like they were plucked from a heavenly sketchbook, but behind every divine facade was a gritty human reality. Mud, sweat, and tears were the real architects here, not some divine hand. The Khmer knew that to claim their heavenly mandate, they had to dig into the earthly muck. And if you've ever tried to dig a hole in the ground, you know that's a task in itself, let alone constructing a celestial mountain. Speaking of mixing the earthly with the divine, the Khmer were pros at adapting Indian architectural styles while adding their own local flavour. Imagine taking the best of Bollywood and giving it a distinctly Cambodian twist. They borrowed elements like the tiered towers and intricate carvings, but made sure to inject their own cultural stamp. These adaptations weren't just artistic, they were political. By adopting and adapting Indian styles, the Khmer were signalling their place in a broader cultural and spiritual world. It was like being part of an ancient social media network, long before hashtags and viral trends. So, as you gaze upon these structures, it's clear that the Khmer weren't just building temples, they were crafting a legacy. They were creating a narrative that would echo through time, a story carved in stone and sculpted in the landscape. It's a testament to human ingenuity and ambition, a reminder that sometimes, to touch the heavens, you've got to start by getting a little mud on your boots. And as the sun continues its climb, casting long shadows across this ancient city, remember, this is just the beginning. The day is far from over, and Angkor still has plenty of stories left to tell. As the sun begins its lazy descent over the sprawling complex of Angkor, you might think it's time for a breather. And you'd be right, sort of. This is the part of the day when the hammering and chiseling take a back seat to the social dynamics that really make this place tick. Picture Angkor as a colossal anthill, not just a hive of activity, but a society with its own unique hierarchy and social order. Let's debunk a persistent myth first. The romantic image of the lone artisan chiseling away with divine inspiration is more appealing than accurate. In reality, construction at Angkor was less a matter of individual artistry and more akin to a military operation. Imagine a well-oiled machine where every cog, from the lowliest labourer to the most skilled sculptor, had a role to play. Now, while we're on the subject of cogs, let's talk about the real power players behind Angkor Wat's construction. It wasn't just about skilled artisans with an eye for detail. The backbone of this operation was an army of conscripted labourers. We're talking tens of thousands forced into service, building not just temples, but the empire itself. And unlike today's workforce, they didn't have the luxury of clocking out at 5 p.m. These folks were working from the crack of dawn until the shadows grew long, all for the reward of rice rations and a place to sleep. It's the kind of job security that makes modern gig economy work look positively cushy. In this complex social ecosystem, skilled artisans were the elite, the rock stars of their time. These craftsmen were not just carving stone, they were carving their place in history. And while their work was undoubtedly intricate and awe-inspiring, let's not pretend they were all thrilled to be there. Sure, some might have found a sense of pride in their craftsmanship, but for many, it was a means to an end. When your primary concern is ensuring your family doesn't go hungry, the artistic legacy tends to take a back seat. Coordinating such a vast workforce required a level of precision that would make a modern logistics manager sweat. Picture this. Teams of workers moving in synchronized harmony, each group responsible for different aspects of construction, from quarrying stone to intricate carvings. It was like a symphony, but instead of violins and cellos, you had chisels and hammers. But don't be fooled by the order and organization. This isn't a story of peaceful cooperation. The workers were under constant pressure, driven by taskmasters who wouldn't hesitate to crack the whip, literally. It wasn't all sunshine and spirituality, it was a grind, and not just in the metaphorical sense. The labourers endured back-breaking work, long hours, and a harsh tropical climate that made even the toughest among them wilt. And yet, despite these harsh realities, the craftsmanship that emerged was nothing short of breathtaking. The social structure at Angkor was as layered as the temples themselves. At the top, you had the king and his court, the puppet masters pulling the strings. Below them were the administrators, the middle managers ensuring the work got done and the quotas were met. Then came the skilled artisans, who, despite their talents, were still at the mercy of the system. And finally, the conscripted labourers, the unsung heroes whose sweat and toil laid the very foundations of Angkor. It's easy to romanticize the past, to imagine that everyone involved was driven by a higher purpose. But let's be real, for most, it was about survival. The promise of food and shelter was a powerful motivator, and in a world where life was often brutal and short, that was enough to keep the wheels turning. The grandeur of Angkor Wat might have been a testament to divine architecture, but it was built on the backs of those who had little choice in the matter. Yet, despite the hardships, the end result was a marvel of engineering and artistry. The temples of Angkor stand as a testament to what humans can achieve, even in the face of adversity. And while the workers might not have been thinking about their place in history as they hauled another block of sandstone into place, they were writing it all the same. It's a reminder that sometimes the most spectacular legacies are built on the shoulders of those who never dreamed of leaving one. So, as you take in the grandeur of Angkor, Remember that it's a mosaic of stories and struggles, of dreams and drudgery. The temples might be silent now, but if you listen closely, you can almost hear the echoes of those who came before, their voices carried on the wind, their legacy etched in stone. The day might be winding down, but the story of Angkor is far from over. There's more to uncover, more to explore, and as the sun sets on this ancient world, it's a promise that tomorrow will bring new stories and new discoveries. As the sun dips behind the horizon, painting the Angkor skyline with hues that Instagram filters can only dream of, let's pivot from stones and sweat to something a little more appetizing: rice. Yeah, you heard me. Rice wasn't just a side dish in the Khmer Empire. It was the main course, the secret sauce, and the economic backbone that made the whole grand spectacle possible. Think of it as the grain that launched 1,000 temples, fueling not only bellies, but also ambitions. Now, let's be real. The idea of rice being the unsung hero in this architectural saga might not be the stuff of blockbuster movies, but without this humble grain, Angkor's grandeur might have been nothing more than a pipe dream. You see, the Khmer weren't just slapping mud on seeds and hoping for the best. They were masters of agriculture, turning the floodplains of the Tonle Sap Lake into a rice-growing utopia. This wasn't a quaint community garden project. It was large-scale agriculture on steroids. Consider this. The empire's rice paddies stretched as far as the eye could see, producing enough to feed a population that some estimates put at over 1 million. That's a lot of rice bowls. And it wasn't just about feeding the masses. This surplus of rice meant that more people could be freed from farming duties to help build those epic temples or join the ranks of the military. The rice fields were essentially the Khmer's version of a Silicon Valley startup, generating the economic capital needed to fuel their ambitious projects. But there's a plot twist. Angkor's prosperity wasn't just built on domestic agriculture. The Khmer were savvy traders too, with a network that stretched from the South China Sea to the Bay of Bengal. They were the original globalists, bringing in exotic materials and ideas that kept their empire vibrant and their innovations cutting edge. Picture bustling trade routes, with ships carrying everything from textiles and spices to precious metals and, yes, even elephants. The Khmer were like the Amazon Prime of the 12th century, except their deliveries took a bit longer than 2 days. Of course, all this trading and rice growing came with a hefty environmental price tag. You don't build a mega city in the jungle without leaving a few scars. Deforestation was a biggie, as trees were cleared to make way for more rice paddies and construction projects. The soil took a beating too, with intensive farming practices leading to depletion and erosion. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, it was the kind of environmental hubris that would make Mother Nature weep. Angkor's ambition was vast, but so was its ecological footprint. And let's not forget about water management, the double-edged sword of the Khmer Empire. Those ingenious reservoirs and canals that kept the city hydrated and the rice fields lush were also its Achilles' heel. They required constant maintenance, and as the empire's fortunes waned, so did its ability to keep this intricate system running smoothly. When the floods came, they came hard, and without the means to control them, the very waters that once gave life could just as easily wash it all away. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We're not wrapping up this tale just yet. There's still more to uncover about how the Khmer Empire's reach extended beyond its borders, both in trade and influence. The Khmer were cultural magpies, picking up bits and bobs from their neighbours and incorporating them into their own unique tapestry. It's a testament to their openness and adaptability, a willingness to learn and evolve that kept them at the forefront of Southeast Asian civilization. So as the evening sky deepens and the stars begin to twinkle above the temples of Angkor, remember that this was a world where rice, trade, and innovation intertwined to create one of history's most fascinating civilizations. The Khmer Empire was more than just a collection of grand monuments. It was a vibrant, living entity that thrived on the interplay of nature, economy, and human ingenuity. And while the sun may have set on their golden age, the stories and lessons of Angkor remain as vivid as ever, waiting for us to uncover them. And speaking of stories, we've only just scratched the surface. There's more to explore, more to learn, as we continue this journey through the heart of one of history's greatest empires. The night is young, and the tale of Angkor is far from over. So stick around. There's more rice to harvest, more trades to broker, and more mysteries to unravel in the chapters ahead. Now, as the story of Angkor continues, let's tackle one of history's greatest misconceptions, the idea that this magnificent civilization just up and vanished overnight like a magician's assistant in a puff of smoke. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The fall of Angkor was less of a dramatic curtain drop and more of a slow fade to black, influenced by factors as intricate as the stone carvings on Angkor Wat itself. First off, let's talk climate change. No, it's not just a modern headache. Back in the 14th and 15th centuries, the Khmer Empire faced a series of severe droughts followed by intense monsoons. It was like Mother Nature couldn't decide whether to bake them or drown them. This climatic chaos wreaked havoc on their water management systems, the same ones that had turned Angkor into an agricultural powerhouse. When your empire's lifeblood is a complex network of canals and reservoirs, a wonky weather pattern can turn prosperity into pandemonium. Once the infrastructure started failing, it was like a domino effect, leading to agricultural decline and food shortages. It's hard to build temples when you're too busy trying to find your next meal. And speaking of building, let's not forget about overexploitation. The Khmer had a knack for engineering, but their enthusiasm for expansion was, shall we say, a tad unsustainable. Deforestation to clear land for agriculture and construction, not to mention wood for fuel, left the soil as bare as a monk's scalp. This ecological toll made it harder to bounce back from those pesky climate issues. It's a classic case of biting off more than you can chew, except instead of an overstuffed burrito, you've got an empire teetering on the brink. Now, sprinkle in some geopolitical spice. The shifting trade routes of Southeast Asia began to bypass Angkor, leaving it on the sidelines like a forgotten blockbuster at the Oscars. As maritime trade routes gained prominence, coastal cities stole the spotlight, and Angkor found itself less of a central hub and more of an inland afterthought. It's like being the kid with the coolest treehouse right before everyone in the neighborhood gets a PlayStation. Suddenly, your woodsy charm isn't quite so appealing. So, no, Angkor didn't collapse like a Jenga tower after one ill-advised move. It was more like a long, slow unraveling, a gradual release of threads that once wove a vibrant tapestry. But here's the kicker. While Angkor's political power diminished, its cultural influence persisted. The legacy of the Khmer Empire wasn't buried beneath the jungle floor. It was etched into the memory of Southeast Asia and beyond. Fast forward to today, and Angkor's ruins are more than just a tourist hotspot, they're a symbol of national pride for Cambodia. The grandeur of Angkor Wat graces everything from the national flag to local beer labels. It's a reminder of a time when the Khmer Empire was a titan of innovation and culture. However, it's also a cautionary tale, an ancient reminder of the dangers of overreach and the limits of human ambition. Just because you can build a temple the size of a small city, does it mean you should forget about the sustainability of your empire's foundation? And yet, despite its cautionary undertones, Angkor continues to draw thousands of visitors every year, all eager to walk among the silent stones and imagine the vibrant life that once thrived there. There's an undeniable allure to these ancient ruins, a curiosity that transcends centuries. Maybe it's the sheer scale of the achievement, or perhaps it's the tantalizing mystery of a civilization that left behind more questions than answers. Whatever the reason, Angkor's stones still speak to us, whispering secrets of bygone glory and human tenacity. As you stand amidst the ruins, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at what the Khmer accomplished. The temples may be weathered, but the spirit of innovation and creativity they represent is timeless. It's a testament to both the ephemeral nature of human endeavors and the enduring power of cultural legacy. Angkor is a story of ambition and adaptation, of triumphs and trials, and it reminds us that history is never just a linear tale, but a complex tapestry woven from the threads of time. So as we wrap up this journey through the heart of the Khmer Empire, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons left behind by those ancient architects and dreamers. Their story is a reminder that while human ambition can reach for the stars, it must also remain rooted in the earth. Angkor's rise and fall offer a poignant lesson about balance between growth and sustainability, between innovation and caution, and ultimately between the past and the future. As the night closes in on Angkor, casting its ruins in soft moonlight, remember that this ancient city still has much to teach us. Its stones may be silent, but their stories echo through time, inviting us to listen, to learn, and to marvel at the enduring legacy of one of history's most remarkable civilizations. The tale of Angkor is far from over. It lives on, not just in the history books, but in the hearts and minds of all who walk its hallowed grounds. You wake up to the sound of a ram's horn, piercing through the pre-dawn darkness like an ancient alarm clock. Welcome to Uruk, the metropolis of the Sumerian world in the 4th millennium BC. Forget about your modern snooze button here. The morning starts early, and for good reason. With the Mesopotamian sun determined to turn the land into a frying pan by midday, early risers get the worm, or in this case, the barley. As you roll out of your mat, you're reminded that the Sumerians were no strangers to sweating the small stuff. They were the original overachievers who figured out that taming the unpredictable Tigris and Euphrates rivers was the key to agricultural success. Picture this, an intricate system of canals, ditches and levees that would make even modern engineers nod in respect. These waterways transformed arid plains into fertile farmland. And you, my friend, are about to get your hands dirty in this marvel of ancient civil engineering. Your fields are a short walk away, but first you navigate the bustling streets of Uruk. With a population pushing 40,000, this place is the New York City of its time. The air is thick with the aroma of barley bread baking in communal ovens, a staple that's as much a part of your diet as complaints about the weather are in modern small talk. Barley isn't just food, it's the backbone of your economy. This humble grain is your currency, your sustenance, and, most importantly, your ticket to the afterlife. Because let's face it, nobody wants to enter eternity on an empty stomach. The gods are said to favour offerings of barley, and who are you to argue with divine preferences? Speaking of divinity, the temple priests are already up and about, their robes flapping like ancient stockbrokers in a market frenzy. They're here to remind you that a portion of your harvest is due to the temple, a kind of cosmic tax that ensures the gods continue to smile upon your fields. It's a system that's as old as the hills and just as hard to escape. Now, let's talk irrigation. The Sumerians didn't just sit around waiting for the rains. That's a luxury you can't afford when your livelihood depends on coaxing life from stubborn soil. Those canals you're about to inspect? They've been painstakingly dug by hand, a labour-intensive process that involves a lot of sweat and perhaps a few choice Sumerian curses. But it's worth it. These waterways deliver much-needed moisture to your barley fields, turning dry earth into a lush green expanse. As you stroll along the canals, you pass other farmers, each with their own irrigation challenges. One is busy clearing silt, a constant battle against the encroaching mud that threatens to choke the water supply. Another is adjusting sluice gates, ensuring the precious liquid flows just right. Too much water, and your crops drown. Too little, and they shrivel under the relentless sun. And then there's the ever-present threat of salinization. The Sumerians, in their wisdom, discovered that over-irrigation can leave behind a crust of salt, rendering the soil as barren as a bureaucrat's soul. This little hiccup in the grand irrigation plan is something you manage with the precision of a tightrope walker balancing on a thread. By mid-morning, you're knee-deep in your barley field, checking the progress of your crop. The plants sway gently in the breeze, a sea of green gold that promises a bountiful harvest. Barley is more than just a crop, it's a measure of wealth and social status. The more you grow, the better your standing in the community. It's not just about feeding your family, it's about making sure they're fed well enough to throw the kind of parties that keep you in the social loop. As the sun climbs higher, you break for a quick meal. Barley porridge, of course, while you ponder the economics of your labour. It's a precarious balance between supply and demand, dictated by the whims of weather and the occasional locust plague. But when it works like magic, transforming sweat and toil into the currency of survival. So there you are, a Sumerian farmer in 4th millennium BC, Uruk, part of a society that's already laying the groundwork for what will become known as civilization. Every grain of barley you grow is a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of your people. You're not just farming, you're participating in a grand experiment in human adaptation and survival. And as the day wears on, you find yourself thinking about the bigger picture. The Sumerians may have been early risers, but they were also early thinkers, laying down the roots of a culture that would echo through history. As you head back to the city, with the sun dipping towards the horizon, you can't help but feel a certain pride. You're part of something larger than yourself, a story that's just beginning to unfold. And just like that, the sun begins its relentless climb, casting long shadows and turning the air into a simmering cauldron. But hey, who needs air conditioning when you've got the invigorating breeze of ancient Uruk sweeping through the fields, right? Now, as you wipe the sweat from your brow, let's dive headfirst into the social melting pot that is Uruk. Picture this, a city teeming with life, where everyone from the lowliest labourer to the temple priests has their role to play. And speaking of those priests, they're the rock stars of this society, minus the leather pants and electric guitars. In a world where the gods call the shots, the priests are your front row ticket to divine favour. But before we get too carried away with visions of celestial karaoke, let's get grounded in the gritty reality of social hierarchy. As a farmer, you're not exactly at the bottom of the food chain, but you're not sipping ambrosia with the elite either. Your status is tethered to the land, the barley you grow, and, of course, your relationship with the temple. Ah, yes, the temple. The beating heart of Uruk's spiritual and economic life. It's a place where religion and politics blend in a cocktail as potent as any modern power play. See, the temple isn't just a monument to the gods, it's the nerve centre of a complex economic network. And like any good network, it thrives on contributions, yours included. Those offerings of barley? More than just a divine bribe, they're a vital part of the city's lifeblood, ensuring that priests can keep the gods appeased and the city running smoothly. Now, let's talk taxes. Believe it or not, the idea of taxes predates even the most ancient IRS horror stories. In Uruk, you don't just pay your dues to the temple, you're also caught in the web of a burgeoning bureaucracy that would make any modern paper pusher proud. Your barley isn't just food, it's currency, and a portion of it goes straight into the city's coffers. Think of it as a personal investment in your own divine insurance policy. After all, keeping the city's infrastructure intact and the priests in fine linen is in everyone's best interest. But why the temple, you ask? Well, in an age where divine intervention was a more accepted explanation for life's unpredictabilities than, say, meteorology or economics, temples were the community's anchor. They were the ancient version of the stock market, hospital, and city hall rolled into one. And like any cornerstone institution, they needed funding. Your barley ensured that the gods got their due, the priests got their robes, and you got a little peace of mind. Of course, this system wasn't without its kinks. The more land you had, the more barley you produced, and the more you were expected to cough up. It's a classic case of the more you make, the more they take, and yet it was a system that kept the wheels of Urukan society spinning. Now, if you think all this talk of taxes and temples is a bit like reading ancient fine print, let's switch gears and zoom in on the human element. Picture the priests not as untouchable demigods, but as savvy operators navigating the wild world of early civilization. These guys had to keep the peace between the fickle gods and the even fickler populace, and they did it with a mix of diplomacy, ritual, and the occasional sacrifice. Though not the kind you're thinking. We're talking barley, not blood. As you haul your offering to the temple, you might catch a glimpse of the head priest, a figure draped in opulent robes, who serves as both spiritual leader and economic strategist. He's the Jeff Bezos of the ancient world, overseeing a vast enterprise that includes not just religious duties, but also managing temple lands and resources. And let's be real, anyone who can juggle divine worship and economic management in a city of 40,000 deserves a little awe. But here's where myth and reality collide. It's tempting to picture the temple as a serene haven of piety, but in truth, it was as bustling and chaotic as any modern-day market. Behind the scenes, temple officials haggled, negotiated, and strategized, all in the name of keeping the city's spiritual and economic balance intact. This was no passive priesthood. It was a dynamic organization that wielded real power, both sacred and secular. As you watch the temple priests go about their daily hustle, you can't help but marvel at the intricate dance of religion and commerce, a partnership as old as civilization itself. This is where social hierarchy and economic necessity intersect, creating a societal structure that would resonate through history. And so, as the sun reaches its zenith, casting a blinding light over the city, you find yourself part of a grand narrative, a tapestry woven from the threads of faith, economy, and community. You may be a farmer, but you're also a vital cog in the machine of Uruk, contributing to a system that, for all its quirks and complexities, keeps the city alive. As the day progresses and the shadows lengthen, you can't help but feel a sense of purpose. Yes, the demands are relentless and the stakes are high, but in the grand scheme of things, your role is crucial. You're not just growing barley, you're nurturing the seeds of civilization itself. And so, as the midday sun bakes the earth to a crisp, you find yourself knee-deep in the art of ancient agriculture, the backbone of your existence and the Sumerian economy. You've got your hands full, literally, as you guide a team of oxen through your fields. Yes, oxen, the original tractor, minus the GPS and air conditioning. These hulking beasts are your partners in crime, turning hard soil into fertile ground, one laborious step at a time. But before you romanticize this pastoral scene, let's debunk the notion that ploughing fields is anything like frolicking through a meadow. Harnessing oxen is a test of patience and muscle, requiring a delicate balance of brute strength and subtle control. It's like trying to steer a pair of stubborn, four-legged tanks with a mind of their own. You're not so much guiding them as negotiating a fragile peace treaty between man and beast. Now, let's talk tools. Forget the shiny, high-tech gadgets of today. Your weapon of choice is the ard, a simple scratch plough that could probably double as a medieval torture device. Made of wood and reinforced with bronze, this rudimentary contraption is more effective than it looks, slicing through the soil to prepare it for planting. It's not glamorous, but it gets the job done most of the time. And then there's the cedar plough, the pièce de résistance of Sumerian innovation. This nifty invention allows you to plant seeds while you plough, a revolutionary concept that cuts down on labour and increases efficiency. Picture a primitive Rube Goldberg machine, a wooden funnel attached to the plough, distributing seeds into the newly turned earth. It's ancient multitasking at its finest, and you can almost hear the collective sigh of relief from your aching muscles. Of course, even with these early technological marvels, farming is anything but a walk in the park. The reality is a grind, a constant battle against the elements and the whims of nature. You're at the mercy of the seasons, each bringing its own set of challenges. Spring is a time of hope and hard work as you sow your fields and pray for rain. Summer, with its relentless heat, tests your endurance and irrigation skills as you race to keep your crops alive. Fall is bittersweet, the harvest a relief, but also a reminder of the work still to be done. And winter, though milder in this part of the world, is a time of rest and reflection as you prepare to start the cycle anew. But let's not pretend that every year is a hallmark card of bountiful harvests and joyous celebrations. The grim truth is that one bad season can spell disaster, wiping out months of labour and plunging you into a spiral of debt and despair. You're not just battling weeds and weather, you're wrestling with the harsh economic realities of supply and demand, a precarious dance that can turn a successful farmer into a destitute one overnight. And speaking of economic realities, let's not forget the role of trade. Your barley isn't just staying local, it's part of a larger network of exchange, a commodity that flows through the veins of the Sumerian trade routes. Barley is your ticket to acquiring goods you can't grow or make yourself. Copper from the mountains, timber from distant lands, and the occasional luxury item to remind you that life isn't all toil and tribulation. This trade network is a lifeline, connecting you to a world beyond your fields, a web of commerce that extends to the far corners of the known world. But before you get too swept up in visions of bustling markets and exotic goods, remember that trade is a double-edged sword, bringing both opportunity and risk. The same routes that deliver prosperity can also bring competition and conflict, as rival city-states vie for dominance in the cutthroat world of ancient commerce. It's a precarious balance, one that requires a savvy understanding of both economics and politics, a lesson that rings as true today as it did millennia ago. And then there's the ever-present spectre of salinization, a pernicious problem that lurks beneath the surface of your fields. Over-irrigation, while a boon in the short term, can leave behind a salty residue that gradually poisons the soil, turning fertile land into a barren wasteland. It's the kind of long-term consequence that demands forethought and careful management, a sobering reminder that even the best-laid plans can go awry. So where does that leave you, the Sumerian farmer, in this grand tapestry of toil and triumph? You're part of an intricate dance, a symphony of human ingenuity and natural forces. a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of your people. You're not just growing crops, you're cultivating a civilization, laying the groundwork for future generations to build upon. And as the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows over the fields, you take a moment to reflect on the day's work. You're exhausted, yes, but also filled with a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that you're contributing to a legacy that will echo through the ages. You're part of a story that's still unfolding, a chapter in the epic saga of human history, a story that's both yours and ours. As the sun dips lower, casting amber hues across the landscape, you shake off the dust and head toward the marketplace. It's time to swap your hard-earned barley for the essentials you can't grow or make on your own. Welcome to the commercial heart of Uruk, where the clamour of barter fills the air and the scent of opportunity mingles with the dust. Think of it as an ancient Wall Street, minus the suits and insider trading scandals. The market is a cacophony of voices, each stall a microcosm of the economy. Here, the barter system reigns supreme, a chaotic dance where skill and negotiation is as valuable as the goods themselves. But don't let the romantic notion of a barter economy fool you. It's more complex than simply trading a handful of barley for a new pair of sandals. It's an intricate web of agreements, a balancing act that requires the acumen of a seasoned wheeler-dealer. Barley is your primary currency, but it's not the only game in town. Enter silver, the shiny newcomer on the scene. We're not talking minted coins, those are still centuries away. Instead, it's measured by weight, typically in shekels. Think of it as the Bitcoin of the Bronze Age, a speculative asset that adds a layer of sophistication to your trading adventures. Silver's rise as a medium of exchange marks a turning point, offering a more universal measure of value and a way to store wealth that won't spoil or sprout. As you navigate through the stalls, the diversity of goods on display is nothing short of a cultural feast. Pottery, with intricate designs that would make any modern artist envious, is a local specialty. Then there are textiles, dyed with vibrant colours extracted from plants and insects, rivaling the hues of any contemporary fashion week. And let's not forget the bronze tools, axes, sickles, and ploughs, crafted to withstand the rigours of agricultural life. But the market isn't just about local produce. Thanks to extensive trade routes, Uruk enjoys an influx of exotic goods from across the known world. Copper from Oman, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and timber from the cedar-rich forests of Lebanon, all pass through these bustling corridors. Each item bears the fingerprints of its origin, a testament to the far-reaching connections that bind this ancient metropolis to distant lands. You spot a trader hawking rare incense from the Arabian Peninsula, its aroma a luxurious indulgence reserved for the temple or the well-to-do. Beside him, a merchant offers delicacies like dates and figs, their sweetness a welcome respite from the staple diet of barley. These luxuries come at a price, of course, often requiring more barley or silver than an average farmer can spare. Yet they're a tantalizing glimpse into the wealth of the wider world, a reminder that life extends beyond the fields and furrows. The market is alive with the hustle of traders and buyers, each transaction a small but significant cog in the economic machine. It's a place where the social hierarchy is laid bare, where the wealthy flaunt their purchasing power and the less fortunate scrape by. Yet, for all its disparities, the market is a great equalizer, a venue where everyone, from the humblest farmer to the richest merchant, comes to haggle, trade, and dream of prosperity. Speaking of dreams, your eyes wander to a stall selling amulets and small figurines, charms believed to ward off evil spirits or curry favour with the gods. In a world where divine intervention is a given, these trinkets are more than mere superstition. They're insurance policies, a tangible way to hedge against the uncertainties of life. Trade routes, the arteries of this bustling economy, are both lifelines and battlegrounds. They connect Uruk to the wider world, but they also expose it to risks, bandits, political strife, and the ever-present threat of economic downturns. Yet these routes are vital, bringing not just goods, but also ideas that shape the cultural and technological landscape. And as you barter for a new clay pot, its surface etched with geometric patterns that speak of a skilled artisan's hand, you're reminded of the interconnectedness of it all. The potter's craft, the trader's journey, your own agricultural toil, all are threads in a tapestry that spans continents and centuries. This bustling market, with its noise and vibrancy, is a living testament to human ingenuity and cooperation. As the afternoon sun casts long shadows, you reflect on your role in this grand economic network. You're not just trading goods, you're participating in a system that fuels innovation and sustains civilization. The market is more than a place of exchange. It's a crucible where the raw materials of culture and commerce are melded into something greater than the sum of their parts. And so, as you exit the marketplace, goods in tow, you carry with you more than just the fruits of trade. You're part of a dynamic system that, for all its unpredictability, offers a glimpse into the shared human experience. It's a network that connects you to a vast world, a world of possibilities and perils, of dreams and realities intertwined. As you make your way back home, the sun sinking lower in the sky, you appreciate the complexity of your place in this vibrant economic tapestry. You're not just a farmer, you're an integral part of a story that continues to unfold, a narrative that links past and present in a seamless, timeless dance. And with each step, you feel the weight of the day's transactions, not just in the physical goods you carry, but in the knowledge that you are weaving your own thread into the rich fabric of history. The market may close, but the economy of Uruk, with its bartering, its silver, and its boundless energy, never truly sleeps. It's a ceaseless interplay of supply and demand, a testament to the enduring spirit of trade and the indomitable will of its people. As you weave through the narrow streets of Uruk, the sun setting behind the ziggurats like some celestial stagehand dimming the lights, it's time to consider the political dynamics at play in this ancient metropolis. You see, Uruk isn't just a collection of farmers, traders and priests playing ancient Monopoly. It's a city-state, a political animal with its own ambitions and power plays. The rulers here are like the CEOs of an ancient corporation, their decisions rippling through every aspect of life, from the barley fields to the temple precincts. The top dog in Uruk is drumroll, please. The Lugal, a title that literally means big man. These guys were the original power brokers, part king, part priest, and part military commander. Imagine a potent mix of political acumen and divine right, with just a sprinkle of military strategy. The Lugal wasn't just sitting pretty on a throne, he was a hands-on ruler who needed to keep the city's various factions in check, from the ambitious temple priests to the merchants with their eyes on the trade routes. Now, if you're picturing a Lugal as a benevolent ruler with a heart of gold, let's dial back that romantic notion. The political landscape of Uruk was as cutthroat as any modern-day boardroom. Power wasn't handed over with a handshake and a smile. It was taken, sometimes by force, and often through cunning. These rulers had to be shrewd, balancing alliances and rivalries like a juggler with too many flaming torches. The stakes were high, and the margin for error was razor-thin. One of the most famous rulers was Gilgamesh, a figure so legendary he got his own epic poem. Yes, that Gilgamesh, the one who went on a quest for immortality and ended up learning some hard truths about life, power, and mortality. In reality, Gilgamesh was likely a historical king who reigned around 2700 BC, but his story was embellished into mythic proportions, becoming a cornerstone of Sumerian cultural legacy. Talk about a legacy project. But let's zoom in on the real impact of these rulers. They weren't just figureheads, they were the architects of Uruk's infrastructure. From the mighty walls that encircled the city to the complex irrigation systems that fed its people. The Lugal's influence was felt in every grain of barley and every brick laid in the city's monumental structures. These projects weren't just for show, they were vital investments in the city's survival and prosperity. Now, what's a ruler without a record? Enter the Sumerians' true claim to fame, writing. These guys didn't just invent the wheel, they invented cuneiform, a system of writing that was as revolutionary as the smartphone. Cuneiform started as a way to keep track of trade and taxes. Basically, ancient Excel spreadsheets inscribed on clay tablets. These records were crucial for managing the city's complex economy, ensuring that every transaction, every tax payment, and every temple offering was meticulously documented. The beauty of cuneiform was its versatility. Over time, it evolved from a basic system of pictographs into a sophisticated script that could capture everything from epic poetry to legal codes. This wasn't just literacy, it was the foundation of civilization, allowing the Sumerians to pass down knowledge, culture, and law across generations. Think of it as the ancient internet. a vast repository of human experience etched into clay. And speaking of legacies, let's not forget the scribes who were the unsung heroes of this literary revolution. These skilled artisans didn't just jot down transactions, they were the keepers of history, the ones who recorded the triumphs and tribulations of Uruk for posterity. They were the journalists, the historians, and the bureaucrats, all rolled into one, ensuring that the Sumerian legacy was preserved for future generations. As the sky darkens and the first stars begin to twinkle, you make your way home, the weight of the day's labour and trade still clinging to your bones. But before you call it a night, there's one more ritual to complete, a moment of reflection and connection to the divine. The Sumerians were big on spirituality, and the end of the day was a time to pay homage to the gods who watched over them. So picture this, a simple offering at a household altar, a little barley, maybe a splash of beer, because even the gods appreciate a good brew. It's a quiet ritual, a chance to give thanks for the day's blessings and seek favour for tomorrow's challenges. It's not just about superstition, it's about finding peace in a world that can be as unpredictable as the Tigris in flood. And as you settle down for the night, with the gentle hum of the city around you, you reflect on the day's events. You're part of a society that's not just surviving but thriving, a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the Sumerians. From the political machinations of the Lugal to the scribes' tireless documentation, you're woven into the fabric of a civilization that's laying the groundwork for the future. The legacy of Uruk isn't just in its monumental architecture or its epic tales. It's in the everyday lives of its people, the farmers, traders, and scribes who kept the city's heart beating. It's in the barley fields and the clay tablets, in the quiet rituals and the bustling markets. It's a story of human achievement, of trial and triumph, of dreams and realities intertwined. As you drift off to sleep, you carry with you the knowledge that you're part of something greater than yourself. You're a link in a chain that stretches back thousands of years, a participant in a grand narrative that's still unfolding. The sun will rise again, the city will awaken, and the cycle will continue, as it has for millennia. And in the quiet of the night, you find solace in the enduring legacy of Uruk, a legacy that echoes through the ages, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. Your morning in 8th century Damascus is anything but ordinary. The sun rises over a city that's basically the medieval version of a bustling metropolis. Imagine the sound of merchants setting up their stalls, their voices blending into a symphony of commerce. You, an Umayyad scholar, are about to dive into this whirlwind of activity. But first, let's talk about what makes this place tick. Damascus, under the Umayyad Caliphate, is a commercial powerhouse, thanks largely to trade routes like the Silk Road. This isn't just your average dirt path. It's a superhighway of goods, ideas, and cultural exchange that stretches over 6,000 miles from China to the Mediterranean. The route pumps silk, spices, and a whole heap of exotic goods into the city, making it a magnet for traders, travellers, and the occasional charlatan looking to make a quick dirham. Ah, money! Speaking of which, you can hear the clinking of dirhams, a sound as reliable as the morning call to prayer. These silver coins are the currency of choice and have a serious weight in your pocket. Literally, a dirham weighs about 2.97 grams, and when you've got a pouch full, it's enough to make you walk with a slight lean. But let's get back to your morning. You've got scrolls to read and scribes to instruct. Your day kicks off with a hearty breakfast flatbread, dates, maybe some cheese if you're feeling fancy. No avocado toast here, but it'll do. After all, the brain can't function on an empty stomach, and you've got a lot of thinking to do. You see, being a scholar in this era isn't just about memorizing texts, it's about interpreting them, debating them, and sometimes questioning the very fabric of the universe. No pressure, right? As you make your way to the library, you take in the vibrant scene. The streets are alive with the chatter of merchants haggling over Persian rugs or Indian spices. You're not just observing commerce, you're seeing the gears of an economy that extends far beyond the city walls. It's a bit like Wall Street, but with more camels. Your destination is the Great Mosque of Damascus, a marvel of Islamic architecture and a hub of intellectual activity. It's not just a place of worship, it's a centre for learning, a place where scholars like you gather to discuss everything from theology to astronomy. Walking through its courtyard, you can't help but feel the weight of history. Constructed under the orders of Caliph al-Walid I in 75 CE, It's one of the oldest and largest mosques in the world. Imposing, yet inspiring. Inside the mosque, you find yourself surrounded by scrolls and manuscripts. The library is a treasure trove of knowledge, containing works from ancient Greece, Persia, and India. You settle down with a text on mathematics, but your mind drifts. Today's council meeting looms large, and the politics of the caliphate are as unpredictable as a sandstorm. Who'll be vying for power today? Which faction will gain favour, and which will fall from grace? In the meantime, you focus on the task at hand. As you read, a scribe sits nearby, ready to record your thoughts. It's a bit like having your own medieval stenographer, minus the typewriter. You dictate notes, pausing occasionally to discuss a point or challenge a theory. It's a collaborative effort, a blend of old wisdom and new insights. But let's not romanticize the life of a scholar too much. It's not all intellectual glamour. There's the constant pressure to produce work that pleases both the caliph and your peers. And heaven forbid you contradict a favoured theory or offend a powerful patron. The stakes are high, and careers can crumble faster than a clay pot in an earthquake. Still, there's something exhilarating about being part of this intellectual community. You're surrounded by some of the brightest minds of the time, exchanging ideas that could shape the future. It's a heady mix of ambition, curiosity, and a touch of existential dread. A cocktail that's as potent now as it was then. As the morning stretches on, you peel yourself away from your scrolls, your mind buzzing with ideas and questions. You step out into the courtyard, the sun now blazing high in the sky. The city's energy is palpable, a reminder that while you spend your days immersed in thought, the world outside is alive with possibility and change. And so, as you prepare to face the rest of your day, you're acutely aware of your place in this grand tapestry of history. A single scholar in a city teeming with life, in an empire at the height of its power, with all the complexities and contradictions that entails. It's a lot to take in before lunch, but hey, nobody said being a scholar was easy. As you stand in that sunlit courtyard, contemplating your place in history, it hits you. The day's intellectual skirmishes are about to begin. Now, in the 8th century Damascus, a scholar's day isn't all quiet reading and pious reflection. No, it's more like the original version of academic Twitter, minus the hashtags, but with just as much drama. Welcome to the Umayyad education system, where today's syllabus is a heady mix of philosophy, science, and theology. It's a bit like Hogwarts, if Hogwarts had been founded by Aristotle and required you to debate the metaphysical properties of gin over lunch. First up is the curriculum, a veritable buffet of knowledge that would make any modern liberal arts program look like a pamphlet. You might start your day wrestling with Aristotle's logic, then pivot to the medical texts of Galen. Ever wondered how the stars align? Astronomy's on the docket too. And let's not forget theology, a subject so intense it could turn your hair grey faster than you can say eschatology. But it's not just about what you learn, it's about how you learn it. Forget endless lectures. Today's education system is all about debate, discussion, and yes, a fair bit of shouting. Picture this. A room full of scholars, each armed with their own scrolls and a hefty dose of self-confidence. The debates are less like stuffy academic conferences and more like intellectual cage matches. The goal? To either win over your peers or at least confuse them enough to claim victory. It's like watching a game of chess, but with a lot more gesticulating and a whole lot fewer rules. You can almost hear the verbal sparring echoing off the walls. 1 minute, you're discussing the nature of the soul. The next, you're caught in a heated argument over the medicinal properties of honey. Spoiler alert, honey's not a cure-all, despite what some might claim. But hey, in an age where the common cold could be a career-ending ailment, a little wishful thinking isn't entirely unwelcome. The scholars here aren't just debating for sport, though. This is serious business, with reputations and livelihoods on the line. You see, scholarship under the Umayyads isn't just a passion, it's a profession. And like any good profession, it comes with its own set of office politics. Rivalries abound, often centering around who has the ear of the caliph or who can claim a breakthrough in mathematical theory. There's a thin line between being the next big thing and becoming yesterday's news. Let's talk about some of the heavyweights in the ring. Al-Kindi, often dubbed the philosopher of the Arabs, is a big name, though he'll hit his peak a little later. Right now, his contemporaries are busy laying the groundwork for what will become a golden age of Islamic science and philosophy. They're translating Greek texts, preserving them like prized heirlooms. These translations are a lifeline, stretching back through time to ancient Greece and forward to the Renaissance and beyond. It's a bit like a high-stakes game of telephone, except here, getting the message wrong could cost you more than just a few puzzled looks. And here's where things get truly fascinating. These translated texts aren't just dusty tomes to be read in solitude. They're the start of a conversation, one that spans cultures and centuries. The scholars in Damascus are not merely passive recipients, they're innovators, blending ancient wisdom with new discoveries. It's the intellectual equivalent of fusion cuisine. Take, for example, their work in mathematics. They're not just adding to the field, they're transforming it, giving the world algebra, a term that comes from the Arabic al-jabra, meaning reunion of broken parts. Talk about putting the pieces together. Now, let's not romanticize this too much. Sure, the scholars are brilliant, but they're also human, prone to the same foibles and flights of fancy as the rest of us. There are tales of experiments gone awry and theories that, in hindsight, seem more like medieval stand-up comedy than serious science. Ever heard of the theory of spontaneous generation? Spoiler alert, it suggests that life can spring from non-life, like mice from grain or frogs from mud. A bit of wishful thinking mixed with a pinch of, let's see if anyone notices. Despite the occasional misstep, or perhaps because of it, the scholars' work is crucial. They're preserving knowledge, ensuring it survives the ravages of time and the whims of rulers. The great library of Damascus, where these debates often take place, is a beacon of learning. It's not just a repository of books, it's a hub of intellectual exchange. Here, ideas flow as freely as the Tigris and Euphrates, carrying with them the promise of progress and the potential for change. But how is all this knowledge actually shared, you ask? Welcome to the world of scribes and copyists, the unsung heroes of the scholarly scene. Their job is to transcribe texts, a painstaking process that involves hours hunched over parchment. It's a bit like being a human photocopier, but with more ink stains and fewer paper jams. And while it's easy to joke about the monotony, the reality is these scribes are essential. Without them, the ideas debated in Damascus might never reach beyond its walls. Of course, not every text makes it through unscathed. There's always the risk of errors. A miscopied word here, a smudged sentence there. It's a minor miracle that any knowledge survives intact. Yet, somehow, it does, a testament to the dedication and perseverance of those who believe in the power of the written word. As you take in the scene, it's easy to get swept up in the romance of it all. But remember, for every brilliant insight, there's a heated argument over whether the earth is flat or round. Spoiler alert, it's round, but good luck convincing everyone. The beauty of this era is in its contradictions, its blend of the profound and the absurd. It's a world where philosophy, science, and theology collide, producing sparks that will illuminate future generations. So, as you step back into the courtyard, your mind buzzing with possibilities, you realize that this isn't just a day in the life of a scholar. It's a glimpse into a world on the brink of transformation, fueled by curiosity and a relentless quest for understanding. And as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the ancient stones, you're reminded that in the grand tapestry of history, knowledge is the thread that binds us all. As the sun blazes down on Damascus, the political games at the Umayyad court are heating up faster than a blacksmith's forge. Welcome to the midday chapter of your life as a scholar, where the intellectual skirmishes of the morning give way to the more perilous dance of political intrigue. If you thought debating Aristotle was intense, just wait until you're navigating the labyrinth of court politics. It's like trying to play chess on a board where the pieces occasionally stab each other in the back. The Umayyad court, dear friend, is a place where power dynamics are as intricate as an Arabic geometric pattern. Picture a scene straight out of a medieval soap opera, courtiers whispering in shadowy corners, envoys delivering cryptic messages, and alliances as fickle as the Damascus weather. Here, scholars like you play dual roles, both advisors and pawns in a Game of Thrones that makes the fictional version look like child's play. Let's start with the Caliph himself, the big man on campus. The Umayyad caliphs were often portrayed as wise and benevolent rulers, the kind of guys who could solve a complex theological debate before breakfast. But peel back the layers of myth, and you'll find a more complicated picture. These leaders were as much politicians as they were theologians, juggling the demands of governance with the ever-present threat of rebellion. Running an empire that stretched from northern Spain to the gates of India was no small feat. It required a mix of diplomacy, military might, and, let's be honest, a healthy dose of paranoia. Take Caliph Abd al-Malik, for example. He wasn't just the guy who minted the first Islamic coins, effectively replacing the Byzantine and Sasanian currencies. He was also the mastermind behind the Arabic language reform in government administration. This move not only solidified Arabic as the lingua franca of the Muslim world, but also reinforced the Umayyad grip on power. Talk about a strategic move. It's like switching the entire empire from Latin to emoji overnight. But while the Caliph had his hands full with administrative reforms and border skirmishes, the real drama unfolded in the court's back rooms. Here, scholars like you had to navigate a minefield of egos, rivalries, and the occasional assassination plot. Your value to the court lay in your knowledge, but woe betide the scholar whose insights contradicted the whims of a powerful patron or, heaven forbid, the Caliph himself. One wrong word, and you could find yourself out of favour faster than you can say intellectual exile. Scholars were expected to advise on matters ranging from theology to astronomy, acting as the intellectual backbone of the empire. But let's not get too misty-eyed about the scholar's role. While it's tempting to imagine a world where reason and logic ruled the day, the reality was more akin to a high-stakes poker game. You might offer a brilliant solution to a pressing issue, only to find your ideas pilfered by a rival or dismissed outright if they clashed with the prevailing political winds. It was a world where fame could turn to infamy in the blink of an eye, and the line between celebrated scholar and disgraced advisor was as thin as a page of parchment. Now, about those myths surrounding the Caliph's wisdom and benevolence. Sure, they were patrons of the arts and sciences, but they were also adept at the age-old art of self-preservation. The court was a stage, and the caliphs were its lead actors, using scholarship as both a tool and a weapon. On one hand, they needed learned men to legitimize their rule, to pen treatises that would echo their greatness through the ages. On the other, they were quick to silence dissent and quash ideas that threatened their authority. It's a bit like commissioning a portrait only to burn it if the artist captures your double chin. But let's not be too cynical. The Umayyad dynasty, for all its faults, was instrumental in fostering an environment where knowledge could flourish. Their court was a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and philosophies, a place where a Greek text could meet an Indian treatise and birth something entirely new. This intellectual cross-pollination was key to the scientific and cultural advances of the era. So while the court was a cauldron of intrigue, it was also a crucible of innovation. As you ponder these political maelstroms, remember that the court's intrigues were not just an Umayyad phenomenon. They were part and parcel of life in any seat of power then and now. The faces and languages may change, but the human penchant for power plays and political manoeuvring remains a constant. Why, you ask? Because at the end of the day, power is the ultimate currency, and everyone wants a piece of the pie, whether they're seated on a throne or behind a lectern. And so, as the sun begins its slow descent over the horizon, you prepare to dive back into the fray, armed with your wits and a keen sense of self-preservation. The afternoon's deliberations await, a mix of high-minded discourse and low-brow politicking. It's a world where the stakes are high, the players are cunning, and every move could be your last. Welcome to the court of the Umayyads, where history is written in ink and sometimes in blood. As the Umayyad court's political drama unfolds like a particularly intense episode of Game of Thrones, let's shift gears to a slightly less perilous pursuit. An afternoon of scholarly tea in 8th century Damascus. But don't let the phrase afternoon tea fool you into imagining dainty cups and polite conversation. This is more like a caffeine-fueled intellectual showdown, where the stakes are as high as a scribe's ink-stained fingers. So, what's brewing in these scholarly circles? You find yourself standing at the crossroads of cultural and religious ideologies that have collided like cosmic bodies in the vast universe of human thought. The conversation is a rich blend of Islamic teachings and the tantalizing remnants of Greek philosophy, each vying for intellectual supremacy like rival factions in an academic turf war. Let's talk about the Islamic influence first. The Quran and Hadith aren't just religious texts, they're comprehensive guides to life, law and governance. They offer a framework through which every aspect of society is viewed, from the ethics of trade to the mysteries of the cosmos. The Quran is the lens through which scholars study the universe, and it's not just about recitation, it's about interpretation, context, and application. Imagine being tasked with understanding not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of it too. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in the dark, only to find out someone keeps changing the stickers. Now, sprinkle in some Greek philosophy. This isn't just the dead white guys club of Aristotle and Plato. It's a treasure trove of knowledge that's been smuggled through the corridors of time. These texts, preserved and translated by your scholarly ancestors, are like intellectual heirlooms. They bring with them radical ideas about logic, ethics, and the nature of existence itself. In a world where the earth is still the center of the universe, Greek philosophy dares to suggest otherwise. The interplay between these two intellectual giants is nothing short of fascinating. On one side, you've got the Islamic scholars who are wary of embracing pagan philosophies that might contradict the divine teachings. On the other, the allure of Greek logic and reasoning is undeniable, offering tools to better understand and articulate the wonders of the universe. It's a bit like mixing oil and water, only to find they've somehow created a new recipe for intellectual enlightenment. But let's not romanticize the harmony of the scholarly brew. The reality is more like a tempest in a teapot. The struggle for supremacy between these ideologies is fierce, with debates that could rival any modern internet flame war. For every scholar trying to reconcile Greek rationalism with Islamic theology, there are 10 more who see them as incompatible. It's a battlefield of ideas, where the spoils of war are the hearts and minds of the next generation. Yet, in this clash of titans, scholars like you serve as the cultural mediators. You're the intellectual diplomats, tasked with navigating the turbulent waters of tradition and innovation. You're not just translators of texts, but translators of thought, bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding. It's a lot like being a DJ at a party where half the guests want to hear classical symphonies, and the other half are demanding the latest pop hits. Good luck finding a compromise that doesn't result in someone storming out in a huff. Your role as a mediator is crucial in a city that's as much a cradle of knowledge as it is a cauldron of conflict. Damascus is a melting pot, a place where cultures meet and sometimes clash like tectonic plates. The city streets are alive with the hum of diverse languages, from Arabic to Greek to Persian, each offering a different lens through which to view the world. It's a bit like living in a medieval Babel, where every conversation is a potential minefield of misunderstanding or, conversely, a goldmine of insight. As the afternoon sun casts long shadows over the city, you sit with fellow scholars, sipping mint tea as you debate the finer points of Aristotle's metaphysics. Around you, the air crackles with the electricity of ideas, each one a potential spark that could ignite a revolution in thought. It's heady stuff, and not just because of the tea's caffeine content. You're part of something much larger than yourself, a grand dialogue through which the very fabric of reality is being woven. And yet, while the intellectual atmosphere is intoxicating, it's also fraught with danger. The wrong opinion, the wrong association, or even the wrong translation can lead to trouble faster than you can say heresy. The stakes are high, and you're constantly aware that your place in the scholarly community is as precarious as a tightrope walker in a sandstorm. One wrong step, and you could find yourself tumbling into obscurity, or worse, exile. Despite these risks, or perhaps because of them, the pursuit of knowledge continues unabated. The scholars of Damascus are driven by an insatiable curiosity, a desire to understand the world and their place in it. They're not just passive recipients of ancient wisdom, they're active participants in its evolution. It's a bit like being part of a relay race, where the baton of knowledge is passed from one generation to the next, each runner determined to leave their mark. In this vibrant intellectual landscape, the boundaries of what is known and what can be known are constantly being redrawn. It's a world where the only constant is change, and where the pursuit of truth is both a personal journey and a collective endeavor. As you sip your tea and listen to the debates unfold, you realize that you're not just witnessing history, you're helping to shape it. So, as the afternoon draws to a close and the shadows lengthen, you find yourself pondering the future. What new ideas will emerge from this crucible of thought? What discoveries will be made, and what old truths will be challenged? One thing is certain, the quest for knowledge is far from over, and the journey promises to be as thrilling as it is unpredictable. And as you prepare to dive back into the fray, you can't help but feel a sense of excitement at the possibilities that lie ahead. After all, in the world of scholarship, the only limit is the imagination, and yours is boundless. As you sit there, pondering the future while the sun dips below the Damascus skyline, it's hard not to get swept up in the romance of it all. But before we get too lost in the reverie of intellectual glory, let's bring it back down to earth. The legacy of the Umayyad scholars isn't just a tale of dusty scrolls and philosophical debates. It's the bedrock upon which the Islamic Golden Age was built. And believe me, that legacy is far grittier and more complicated than any bedtime story might suggest. First up, let's tackle the myth of the Golden Age. Sure, it's easy to imagine this period as a time when scholars sat around in perfectly serene libraries, inventing algebra and mapping the stars with the kind of effortless genius that makes the rest of us feel like underachievers. But here's the reality check. Life as an Umayyad scholar was no walk in the botanical garden. The pressures were immense, the politics cutthroat, and the financial rewards, well, let's just say they weren't exactly making it rain with dirhams. Scholars were often at the mercy of their patrons who, much like today's venture capitalists, could be as fickle as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. You could be the toast of the town one day, only to find yourself out of favour and out of a job the next. And then there were the economic realities. While you might imagine these scholars living in opulent homes, the truth is, many of them were scraping by, their remuneration often as meagre as a camel's diet in a drought. But here's the thing. Despite the hardships, the scholars of the Umayyad period laid the foundational stones for what we now celebrate as the Islamic Golden Age. They were the pioneers who dared to think beyond the boundaries of their own time, integrating the rich tapestry of Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge into something uniquely Islamic. They sowed the seeds that would later blossom into advances in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. One of the most revolutionary concepts to emerge from this intellectual ferment was algebra. Al-Khwarizmi, whose work was heavily influenced by the translations and studies conducted during the Umayyad era, would go on to formalize this branch of mathematics. The very word algebra comes from his seminal work, Al-Kitab al-Muqtazar fi Hisab al-Java wal-Muqabala, published around 820 CE. Talk about a legacy. His name is quite literally etched into every high school math textbook. Then there's the field of medicine. The Umayyad scholars, by preserving and expanding upon the medical texts of the Greeks and Persians, set the stage for future physicians like Avicenna, whose Canon of Medicine would become a standard text in both the Islamic world and medieval Europe. These were the folks who took Hippocrates and Galen's ideas, added a dash of ancient Indian and Persian knowledge, and stirred it into a concoction that would treat everything from the common cold to complex surgeries. So, while the Golden Age might sound like a glitzy period of unfettered progress, it was really a time of relentless effort, intellectual risk-taking, and, yes, a fair amount of trial and error. The scholars were more like intellectual gladiators, battling not only for knowledge but for survival in a world that could be as unforgiving as a desert sun. Now, let's zoom out a bit. The impact of these scholars isn't just historical footnote material, it reverberates through the corridors of time, influencing even our modern world. From the algorithms that power your smartphone to the astronomical charts that guide space exploration, the echoes of their work are all around us. And yet, we often romanticize their era, imagining a utopia where knowledge reigns supreme. But the reality? It was a world of contradictions, where brilliance thrived amid chaos, and progress was often a hard-won prize. And here's an ironic twist for you. While the Umayyad Caliphate itself eventually fell in 750 CE, its scholarly contributions endured, transcending borders and empires. Knowledge knows no conquerors, and the intellectual currents set in motion by these scholars flowed onward, reaching as far as the Renaissance and reshaping Western thought. Their work was like a beacon, lighting the way for future generations to explore the vast landscape of human understanding. So, as you wrap up your day in this bustling city of Damascus, take a moment to appreciate the complexities and contradictions of the past. The Umayyad scholars were not just part of some distant, idealized era. They were real people, navigating a world as turbulent and unpredictable as our own. And while their stories may be romanticized, their legacy is rooted in the gritty reality of human endeavor, a testament to the enduring power of curiosity and the relentless quest for knowledge. As you head home under the starlit sky, with the hum of the city fading into the night, remember that history is not just a series of dates and events. It's a tapestry of human experience, woven with threads of ambition, struggle, and triumph. And whether you're a scholar of the 8th century or a student of today, that quest for understanding, that drive to uncover the truths of the universe, remains unchanged. So here's to the scholars, past and present, who dare to dream and strive to know. After all, in the grand scheme of things, we're all just trying to make sense of the stars. If you ever thought your family's holiday gatherings were a logistical nightmare, let's dive into the ancient Celtic festivals, where the stakes were a tad higher than overcooked turkey. Think less awkward small talk, more appeasing spirits to ensure the crops don't fail. The Celts, those enigmatic folks of Iron Age Europe, were the original party planners, and their celebrations were an intoxicating blend of merrymaking and survival strategy. No, they didn't have pumpkin spice lattes, but they had salmon and Beltane, and that's a whole other level of seasonal commitment. Let's kick things off with Samhain, which might sound suspiciously like Halloween because, spoiler alert, it kind of is. Celebrated around October 31st, when the autumn winds started to bite, Samhain was when the Celts believed the veil between the living and the dead was thinner than a millennial's patience for slow Wi-Fi. The Celts, practical as ever, saw this as both a time to honour their ancestors and a chance to predict the future. Because, why not try to catch a glimpse of what's coming while you're already chatting with Uncle Ghost? To the Celts, Samhain marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, a time when survival instincts kicked in harder than your morning caffeine fix. Crops were gathered, livestock was brought in, and everyone battened down the hatches for the cold months ahead. This wasn't just a quaint harvest festival, this was a plan ahead or starve sort of deal. They'd light massive bonfires, possibly to keep warm, but also to ward off any unwelcome spirits who might be loitering around, because, let's be honest, nobody wants a spectral squatter in their backyard. Now, here's a twist. The Celts weren't just about spooky fun. They had an economic edge to these festivals. Picture this. You're a farmer with more sheep than you know what to do with. What better time to barter them than at a festival where everyone's gathered? It's like a medieval Black Friday, but instead of flat-screen TVs, you're trading livestock. And if you think that sounds absurd, remember that today's equivalent might just be re-gifting that unwanted fruitcake from Aunt Edna. Speaking of livestock, let's not skip over Beltane, celebrated around May 1st, when the Celts were rolling out the red carpet for summer. Unlike Samhain, Beltane was all about life and fertility. Let's survive the winter and more. Let's ensure those sheep multiply. Fires, once again, played a starring role. But these weren't just any fires. They were protective and purifying, a way to bless the cattle before sending them out to pasture. Picture ancient Celts herding their cows through the smoke, a ritual that probably left the cattle wondering what they'd done to deserve such a dramatic exit. Beltane was also a time of matchmaking. Yes, it was Tinder before Tinder. No swiping, just dancing around maypoles and jumping over fires. The Celts believed that jumping over the Beltane fire would improve fertility. So next time someone complains about their dating app woes, remind them they could be leaping through flames instead. Of course, these celebrations weren't just about fun and games. They were deeply rooted in the agricultural calendar. The Celts lived by the land. Their festivals were a reflection of their dependence on it and their respect for its cycles. These gatherings reinforced community bonds and were a reminder that, in the grand scheme of things, everyone was at the mercy of the same uncontrollable elements. But let's not romanticize everything. While the image of druids dancing under the moonlight is enchanting, the reality was harsh. Life was unpredictable, and these festivals were a way to impose some sense of control over the chaos of their world. Sure, the Celts loved a good party, but they were pragmatic too. They understood that celebrating the harvest wasn't just a tradition, it was a necessity. The Celts' savvy use of their festivals for economic purposes is a reminder that even back then, people knew the value of a good trade. While our modern-day holidays might involve exchanging gift cards or fruitcakes, They wouldn't exist without the ingenuity of our ancient predecessors who understood that bartering a cow could be just as meaningful as giving a pair of socks. So next time someone complains about the commercialization of holidays, you can tell them it's been happening since our ancestors were swapping sheep. In the end, the Celtic festivals were a unique blend of myth, merriment, and necessity. They were as much about honouring the past as they were about securing a future. The Celts embraced the duality of life and death, light and dark, survival and celebration. And in doing so, they left us with traditions that have evolved but still echo through time, reminding us that while the parties may change, the reasons behind them remain remarkably similar. And so, the Celts' festivals weren't just about charming rituals and atmospheric bonfires. They were about navigating life's uncertainties with a bit of flair. Speaking of bonfires, let's dive into what might be the most pyrotechnically enthusiastic part of Celtic celebrations. If you think your local fireworks display is the epitome of controlled chaos, you haven't met a Celtic bonfire. These weren't your average campfires. They were towering infernos that could singe eyebrows from 100 paces. Imagine a fire so immense it could make a modern-day fire marshal break out in a cold sweat. Why such a blaze, you ask? The Celts were convinced that these fires had the power to cleanse, protect, and even predict the future. They believed the smoke would ward off evil spirits, and the flames might coax the sun to stick around a bit longer during the winter months. The irony here is that while they were trying to ensure a bright future, they were risking a very immediate, fiery end. It's a bit like trying to fix your eyesight by staring directly at the sun, bold, but not exactly OSHA approved. Of course, the bonfires were more than just a safety hazard. They were a communal event. People would gather around these massive pyres, tossing in bones of slaughtered livestock, which, by the way, is how we got the word bonfire from bonefire. It was a time to connect with neighbours, share stories, and quite possibly exchange tips on how not to burn your village down. The fires served as a centrepiece for the festivities, much like a Thanksgiving turkey, except with more flames and fewer calories. But let's not forget the Druids, those enigmatic figures who played a starring role in these gatherings. Picture them as the rock stars of ancient Celtic society, wielding both spiritual and social influence. These guys were multitasking before it was cool, acting as priests, judges, and even the ancient equivalent of the Weather Channel. They'd predict the coming seasons, a task that involved a lot more guesswork than our modern meteorological models. One can only imagine the pressure. If the Druids say it won't rain next week, then by all means, let's plan that outdoor ceremony. Druids had the unenviable job of trying to make sense of the chaotic calendar, which was about as straightforward as a tax code. They'd use the festivals as a way to align communities with the agricultural year, ensuring that everyone was on the same page when it came to planting and harvesting. In a world without Google Calendar reminders, this was no small feat. Their influence extended beyond the spiritual realm into the very real concerns of food production and survival. The social dynamics at these festivals were as complex as the rituals themselves. The festivals were a melting pot of social, economic, and political interactions. Think of them as the original networking events. Except instead of LinkedIn connections, you were forming alliances that could mean the difference between prosperity and famine. Marriages were often arranged during these festivals, not just for love, or lack thereof, but for strategic partnerships. And while the idea of leaping over bonfires to ensure fertility might sound quaint, it was a very real attempt to secure the next generation of workers for the fields. So, while the romantic notion of druidic wisdom guiding the Celts through life's uncertainties is appealing, the reality was a bit more practical and a lot more precarious. The Druids were crucial in maintaining social order and ensuring that the community worked as a cohesive unit. Their predictions and blessings were less about mystical foresight and more about maintaining a semblance of control in an unpredictable world. These festivals, like Samhain and Beltane, were more than just calendar events. They were lifelines in a world teetering on the edge of survival. The Celts understood that these gatherings were essential for reinforcing community bonds and ensuring that everyone was prepared for whatever the seasons might bring. So, while we might chuckle at the thought of leaping through fire or relying on druids for weather forecasts, these rituals were born from necessity and an understanding of the world that was deeply rooted in the land and its cycles. In the grand tapestry of history, the Celtic festivals stand out as a testament to human resilience and innovation. They remind us that while the tools and technologies may have changed, the human need for connection, celebration, and a bit of luck has remained remarkably constant. So next time you're at a holiday gathering, feeling overwhelmed by the chaos, remember the Celts and their bonfires. They were just trying to make sense of their world, one blaze at a time. And who knows, maybe there's still a bit of druidic wisdom to be found in the flicker of a flame. But hold on tight, because in the next part we'll uncover more layers of these fascinating rituals and the roles that shape them. And speaking of flickering flames and druidic wisdom, let's tackle some of those Hollywood-fueled myths about the Celts. You know, the ones that make every Celtic festival look like it's straight out of a fantasy epic, complete with mysterious rituals and enough fog to make a London evening jealous. Now, don't get me wrong, a little mystique goes a long way, but when the silver screen starts turning bonfires into dragon-summoning ceremonies, it's time for a reality check. First up on our myth-busting mission, the notion that every Celtic festival was a grand sacrificial spectacle where cows were as expendable as popcorn at a movie theatre. Sure, the image of a prized cow being led to its doom under a full moon adds drama, but economically speaking, it's a load of bull. In a society where livestock was the backbone of wealth and survival, sacrificing your best cow would be like throwing your savings account into a bonfire. It just didn't make economic sense. A goat, however, might have been a more realistic offering, less financial impact, but still enough to appease the gods and keep the neighbours impressed. And let's talk about those druids again. Hollywood loves to paint them as all-knowing, mystical figures with powers rivaling Gandalf. In reality, they were more like the Iron Age equivalent of your local weatherman, except instead of Doppler radar, they had to rely on the stars and a hefty dose of guesswork. Their predictions were crucial for planning agricultural activities, but they weren't about to start casting spells to make it rain gold. Their wisdom was practical, grounded in generations of observing patterns in nature. So while it's tempting to imagine them conjuring storms or parting seas, their influence was more about social cohesion and guiding the community through the complexities of life. Now, onto the economic nuts and bolts of these festivals. Hosting a Celtic festival wasn't all fun and games. It was a logistical and financial challenge. Picture organising a massive party where the guest list includes your entire tribe and neighbouring clans. You need food, drink, entertainment, and enough space to accommodate everyone without starting a turf war. The costs could be astronomical by ancient standards. Livestock, grains and ale didn't just appear out of thin air. There was an economy at work, and someone had to foot the bill. In fact, festivals like Samhain were prime opportunities for trade and barter, where goods and services were exchanged and debts were settled. Think of it as a mix of a county fair and a stock exchange, where the stakes were high and shrewd negotiations could make or break a family's fortune. This wasn't just a time for merrymaking, but a crucial period for economic activity. The Celts understood that while a good party was important, it was also an opportunity to strengthen economic ties and ensure the community's prosperity. And here's where the mythic and the mundane collide spectacularly, the role of fire. Sure, we've romanticized the bonfires, imagining them as portals to other worlds, but they were also a practical tool in managing livestock. Fires weren't just for dramatic effect, they were a means of purification and protection. Herding cattle between two fires was believed to bless and protect them from disease. This wasn't some magical incantation. It was an ancient form of biosecurity, a way to keep your economic assets, aka your cattle, healthy and productive. Now, let's not forget the social dynamics at play. These festivals weren't just about individual survival, they were crucial for maintaining social order and hierarchy. The chief or king who hosted the festival had to display generosity and wealth, cementing his status as a leader capable of ensuring the community's well-being. It was a political show of power wrapped in the guise of a celebration. So while we might see images of carefree dancing and revelry, there was a lot more at stake, literally, like land, power, and the continuation of leadership. In the grand tapestry of Celtic life, these festivals were threads woven with both myth and reality. They were complex events that required careful planning, economic foresight, and a deep understanding of social structures. The romanticized versions we often see are appealing, but they gloss over the grit and grind that went into making these gatherings successful. So, The next time you're tempted to imagine a Celtic festival as a scene from a fantasy film, remember that while the magic was there, it was deeply intertwined with the harsh realities of survival and society. And on that note, let's keep our festival journey burning bright as we delve into the intricate roles and responsibilities that defined these ancient gatherings. From the economic strategies to the political chess games, every aspect of a Celtic festival was a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. As we continue our exploration, we'll uncover more layers of these fascinating rituals and the roles that shaped them, reminding us that while the myths are captivating, the truths are even more compelling. Stay tuned, because we're just getting started on this history ride. And while we're riding the wave of history, let's zoom in on the political machinations that made these festivals more than just an excuse to bust out the finest mead. The Celtic festivals were the Iron Age equivalent of a G7 summit meets Burning Man, where tribal leaders weren't just showing off their dance moves, they were brokering power plays that could redefine the landscape of alliances across the land. Imagine if your local music festival also doubled as a high-stakes game of Risk, where every handshake could alter the balance of power. The Celtic tribes, scattered across what we now know as Ireland, the UK, and parts of France, were no strangers to politicking. These festivals were prime opportunities for chiefs and kings to flex their clout, securing their positions not just with lavish feasts, but with strategic marriages and alliances. Think of it as a Game of Thrones episode, sans the dragons, but with just as much intrigue. In this world, power wasn't just about military might, it was equally about who you knew, who you could trust, and who could be persuaded with a well-timed gift of cattle. Now, before you imagine these gatherings as a boys' club with women relegated to the sidelines, let's flip that script. The trope of passive Celtic women is as misleading as a weather forecast on a British summer day. In reality, women were key players at these festivals. They weren't just there to look pretty and pour mead, they were active participants in negotiations and rituals, wielding influence in ways that might surprise those who buy into outdated stereotypes. Take the case of Boudica, the warrior queen of the Iceni tribe, who famously led an uprising against Roman rule in 60 AD. While Boudica's exploits are more familiar, she was far from an anomaly. Women in Celtic society could inherit land, command armies, and participate in governance. During festivals, their roles as negotiators and deal brokers were crucial. The power of a well-placed marriage proposal or a whispered piece of advice at the right moment could shift allegiances and alter the course of tribal politics. These women weren't just passive symbols of fertility, they were power players in their own right. The Celtic festivals served as a stage for these intricate dances of diplomacy. Picture a tribal leader, eager to secure the loyalty of a neighbouring clan. He might offer his daughter in marriage, not as a pawn, but as a strategic manoeuvre to form a bond that could ensure peace and cooperation. And let's not kid ourselves. These were high-stakes gambles. If the deal went south, it could mean war, a fate as unwelcome then as a surprise audit is today. Economically, the festivals were also a chance to showcase wealth and stability. A leader who could host a grand celebration with enough food and drink to satisfy the masses proved he had the resources and organization to lead. It was a show of power wrapped in the guise of generosity. The cattle, grains, and mead were more than just party favors. They were tangible proof of a leader's ability to provide for his people. If you think modern politics can be a theatrical display, just imagine what a Celtic leader could do with 100 sheep and a bonfire. And speaking of shows, let's not overlook the entertainment factor. These festivals weren't just political chess matches. They were cultural extravaganzas, complete with music, dance, and storytelling. Druids, bards, and poets played a vital role in these gatherings, not just as entertainers, but as preservers of history and tradition. Their tales and songs were the glue that held the community's collective memory together. They reminded everyone of their shared past and the reasons why alliances were necessary, reinforcing bonds through the power of narrative. Of course, let's not romanticize everything. The political landscape of the Celts was as volatile as a reality TV show, and these festivals were fraught with tension. A misstep could lead to feuds, and alliances could shift as quickly as the weather. But these gatherings offered a chance to navigate those treacherous waters with a bit of flair, using wit, charm, and the occasional strategic marriage to keep the peace. So, as we peel back the layers of these ancient festivals, it's clear they were much more than bonfires and maypoles. They were the beating heart of Celtic society, where politics, economy and culture intertwined in a complex dance. The festivals were a mirror reflecting the strengths and vulnerabilities of a people striving to maintain their identity in a world that was constantly changing. And as we continue our journey through this historical landscape, remember that the stories we tell about the past are as much about who we are today as they are about who we were then. In the next installment, we'll delve deeper into these roles and explore more mysteries of the Celtic world. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that there's always more beneath the surface, just waiting to be uncovered. So stay tuned, because this historical ride is far from over. And on we go, diving headfirst into the modern echoes of ancient Celtic festivals. If you've ever found yourself at a Halloween party or a May Day celebration, congratulations. You've been living in the shadow of Celtic tradition, albeit with fewer bonfires and more awkward small talk. Today's festivals, while less reliant on predicting weather patterns or appeasing spirits, still show that our ancestors knew a thing or two about creating communal joy. Let's start with Halloween, the modern descendant of Samhain. Once a night of ancestral homage and supernatural speculation, it's now a candy-fueled extravaganza where the scariest thing might be your dentist's bill. Yet, the core remains: we love a good scare. That ancient thrill of the unknown, of the veil between worlds thinning, still captivates us. Sure, we've traded druids for Dracula costumes, but the essence is unchanged, a celebration of the mysterious and macabre, wrapped in a fun-sized chocolate bar. Speaking of transformations, consider how Beltane's fires, once leapt over for fertility, have morphed into the more benign maypole dances. It's less about jumping through flames and more about not tripping over your feet, but the communal spirit endures. The maypole, with its ribbons and dances, symbolizes unity, much like the bonfires of old. It's a shared experience, a nod to the power of community, minus the risk of setting your trousers alight. But here's the kicker. These ancient practices haven't just survived, they've been commercialized. Halloween alone rakes in over $9 billion annually in the US, a far cry from the days of bartering sheep. This economic juggernaut is a testament to the enduring appeal of festival culture, proving that while the Celts may have been savvy traders, they couldn't have imagined just how lucrative their traditions would become. It's a reminder that while we might romanticize the past, we're not above turning it into a business opportunity. Now let's talk about the elephant, or rather the cow in the room, how these festivals reflect our ongoing obsession with both community and spectacle. The modern festival scene, from Coachella to Burning Man, echoes the Celtic gatherings. They're places where social hierarchies can be challenged, where creativity and community collide in a haze of music and metaphorical bonfires. Much like their ancient counterparts, these festivals are about breaking free from the everyday, if only for a weekend. Yet, as we enjoy these modern gatherings, we're reminded of the historical grit behind the glam. The Celts didn't throw parties just for kicks. Their festivals were lifelines, crucial for survival. Today, while we might not be bartering livestock, these events still serve as economic engines for the communities that host them. They're a chance to showcase local culture, boost tourism, and, let's be honest, sell a lot of overpriced flower crowns. And let's not forget the political dimension. Just as Celtic festivals were arenas for power plays, today's gatherings can also be hotbeds of activism and social change. Whether it's a music festival promoting eco-friendly practices, or a parade advocating for equal rights, the spirit of using communal celebrations to push for progress is alive and well. The Celts would probably nod in approval, recognizing the power of a good gathering to drive change. As we wrap up this journey through time, it's worth pondering what makes these ancient traditions so enduring. Perhaps it's our innate desire for connection, for rituals that anchor us in a world that often feels tumultuous. The Celts understood that life's uncertainties called for moments of communal respite, a chance to come together, share stories, and maybe leap over a fire or two. Their festivals were as much about survival as they were about celebration, a duality that resonates with us today. So, next time you're donning a Halloween costume or weaving a maypole, take a moment to appreciate the layers of history beneath your feet. These traditions, while repackaged and commercialized, still echo the timeless human need for community and connection. The Celts might not have had Wi-Fi, but they knew the value of a good party, a lesson we'd do well to remember. In the end, whether it's ancient rituals or modern festivals, the beat goes on, reminding us that while the details change, the dance of life and celebration remains timeless. And with that, dear listeners, our historical ride through the Celtic world comes to a close. Not with a bang, but with the flicker of a bonfire, eternally burning in the collective memory of humanity.